I'll meet him here tomorrow.
All right, welcome everyone to Wuchina Twin Time. I'm Ivan Wuchina.
I'm Ian Wuchina, and today we are just like honored, starstruck to have a very, very successful character actor, producer. I mean, just, you know,
A legend all around.
Yes, legend all around. Ernst Harth.
Ernst Harth.
Hello, and for the people that are curious, the C in C Ernst Harth stands for credits and checks, and as long as it's on those two, I'm happy. That's all. That's all you need to know.
Love it.
No, my first name is Carrie, and I just don't feel like a Carrie.
No,
But when my mom went into the hospital, they asked her, "What do you want to name him?" And she just happened to have been watching a Cary Grant movie.
Oh, nice.
Ooh, that's cool.
And I'm so thankful. I apologize if you can hear they're doing construction in my building. So
no worries. We have a
Somebody
blind basset hound right here who's really needy. So if you hear some heavy breathing,
he's
that's
asleep.
that's what that will be.
I'm just thankful that my mother wasn't watching a Humphrey Bogart film, because I do feel like a Humphrey.
Oh, there you go.
I think Carrie's a pretty good one. So
Cool.
yeah,
So-
Carrie.
But yeah, so when in high school, the reason I changed is because in high school I was on the wrestling team, and when they would introduce the wrestlers, they'd always go, "And now wrestling in the heavyweight category, Carrie." Or, "Here it comes, gonna wrestle you." And so I changed it to my middle name, but because out of respect for my parents, I figured I can't drop my name totally, so I just tacked the C on. But it's always weird when I go for auditions or when I meet producers and stuff. They always refer to me as C Ernst, and I just go along with it because, you know, technically it's my name. But eventually I just say, you know, you can just call me Ernst. Some people even call me C, which just wouldn't even occur to me to call somebody by their first initial.
Yeah.
It's like something your dad does when he's like too lazy. Like, C, go grab the, you know, go fix the dryer or something.
That's something our dad would do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I used to joke that the C stood for Christ, and my brother's name was Jesus, and that way it made it easy for my dad, because when it was time to eat dinner, he'd just go out on the porch, go, "Jesus Christ, get in here."
So like,
let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
and you know, a lot of, you know, you're 6'6", you're a big guy. You get a lot of roles that like, and then like you said, you have like an athletic background. So like, what got you into the acting bug?
I think, well, first of all, the first 5 years of my life, I was an only child. So it was like an opportunity to entertain I lived with my grandparents. So basically it was just like being the silly goof, was just like, you know, entertaining my grandparents whenever I had the chance. And then when school started, it was just a continuation of that. It was just, you know, it was a good way to, being the big kid, always being bigger than everyone, you knew they were going to laugh. You knew they were going to pick on you. So why not you be in charge of the laugh? You know, you control when they laugh at you. And so I guess that's basically why I started acting the fool. Plus it entertained myself. You know, it's like growing up, I would do things just for the sake of my own entertainment. Like I would be walking home from school and I'd see a bunch of girls behind me walking home from school as well. And I would just stop and start making out with a light post. You know? There's no rhyme or reason to it. But inside I'm like, they must think I'm crazy. And then they walk past me while I'm making out with the light post. And then I just stop and continue walking home. No, the best one was I was in Niagara Falls, and we were on a field trip with our school, and I got bored listening to them talking about the flower display around the clock or whatever it was. And I walked over to the railing where Niagara Falls was, and I looked over the railing, and I just stood there and looked over and kept looking over the railing. And eventually I went, "Dad, hold on, Dad, it's okay." And before I knew it, I looked around, and there must have been maybe 5-10 people circling around me, and it eventually grew to about 20 people. And I'm screaming, "Dad, it's okay. They're going to get help. Hold on." And then I just walked away. And now you've got like 20, 30 people standing there really trying to figure out where my dad is. And now they're looking at me trying to figure out why I just walked away. But there was no reason to this. It's just stuff that entertained me. So when I found out that I could do this for a reason, it's like in school, and it all started in kindergarten. The school I went to used to do a Christmas pageant every year, and they decided it would be funny to get the biggest kid in the school to play Santa. Well, I was in kindergarten and I was already the biggest kid in the school.
Wow.
So I'm in a Christmas pageant with a bunch of grade 4 and grade 5s, and I'm the guy playing Santa, and I'm in kindergarten. So you can't take yourself too seriously when you've already been put in that position. So I just went with it and acted the clown. In school, we'd have one side of the hallway that went this way and one side that went this way. I would walk down the center, and it became known as like, well, that's just where Carrie walks, down the center of the hallway. In the wintertime, I'd wear shorts and Hawaiian shirts because, it's getting me attention. Yeah. And like I said, if you can be in control of why they're laughing at you, then later on in life, you realize, wait a second, I can get paid for this. Well, that's bonus. But yeah, I did skits in school. I did, assemblies. I'd write we had in high school, we had a radio station, and I was the DJ. Our school had a radio station that you would talk, play music and talk while the kids are in the hall going to class and stuff. And I ended up getting let go because at the end of the day, I would play stuff like, Willie Nelson, On the Road Again. And, in the mid 80s, that's not what a bunch of teenagers want to hear. In the morning, I would play, like Smurfs, I would just play whatever I wanted, what I thought was funny. But they wanted to hear Corey Hart, Sunglasses at Night and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't interested in that. So I just goofed around all through high school, did plays, did community theater. Me and some friends used to go to the nursing homes, and we'd put on little skits and plays and stuff. And it just, it was always a part of me. It was never thought of as a career or something I wanted to pursue. It was just, an opportunity to play around and have fun. And like I said, be in control of everyone laughing at me. If you're going to laugh at me, I'll determine what you laugh at. So that's how I start. So I didn't really catch the bug as far as acting as much as I just,
it
was just who I was.
It's nice.
You're always a clever person, man. That's cool. That's cool. When did you start like going to auditions?
Oh, wait, yeah.
Really getting hardcore into acting?
Okay, well, I was born in Ontario, Canada, and I moved out here in '89 because a friend of mine, we were sitting having coffee one day. We were both on welfare, basically. And he says, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do? He says, you want to go to Vancouver? I didn't know where Vancouver was. I had no idea what Vancouver was. I said, okay. So we jumped on a Greyhound, and 4.5 days later, we were in Vancouver. I was 19 years old. I was looking around like
just a baby, man. Shit.
Just a baby. And lived in the suburbs, lived in the cozy life, the middle class life. And all of a sudden I'm basically in Skid Row, downtown Vancouver at 19. And like, okay, I'm here now. Now what? And so I ended up getting a job at a nightclub. Well, that's giving it too much credit. It was a dive bar that was also a strip club. And we walked, because of my size, I'd already at 19 had started working in bars as doorman, because at my size, you walk into a bar, go, hi, I'm looking for a job. They go, what's your experience? You go, I'm 6'6", I'm 300 and something pounds. There's my experience. You either want me at the door or you don't. And I would usually get hired. So the first day we arrived, the guy that I had come with had only been here once before, and he only knew Skid Row part of Vancouver. So that's where we ended up. Walked into a bar that he knew. And we walked up to the owner and said, hi, I'm looking for a job as a doorman. And it was a South Asian, East Indian guy. And he says, don't need doorman, sorry. I said, oh, okay. And we turned around and left. And as I'm turning around, he goes, I only need DJ. And I went, okay, acting skills kick in now. And I turned around, well, aren't you just, this is your lucky day. I was head, and then I just started naming every club I'd ever been to in Ontario as a patron. And I said, well, I was head DJ at Twist nightclub. I was head DJ at Stages nightclub. I was head, and I just started naming all these stuff. And he goes, whoa, oh, great. You come back at 6 o'clock, you meet the head DJ, Ali, and he'll put you through. And I said, okay. So I came back at 6 and I walk into the DJ booth, which wasn't really a booth. It was basically a closet behind the bar that had a hole in the wall cut out so that you could see the girls on stage. And I walk into the DJ booth and then he goes, hi, you Tiny? And that was the name I went by then, original. I said, yeah. He goes, you must be the new DJ. I said, I guess so. He goes, okay, I'll see you at midnight, and leaves. Now, I've never been in a DJ booth, never mind been a DJ. He says, see you at midnight, and leaves. There's a girl on stage in the middle of dancing. The music's playing. The lights are flashing. I'm in the DJ booth. Okay. The music's playing. All of a sudden I hear the music stop. And now all I can hear is the lights flashing. And I hear, hello. I look up and there's a naked woman standing on stage with her hands on her hips. And she's like, hello. I go, okay, guys, that was, and the thing was, I didn't know anything about mics. I didn't know how to control the board or anything. So I look down, I see the word MIC. I figured, well, I'm smart enough to figure out that must be the mic. And I just pull the level all the way to the top, and through the entire bar, all you hear is people are diving, they're covering their ears. And I'm like, okay, now that was, let's hear. And I'm just trying to think of anything I'd ever heard in a strip club before. Okay, guys, that was, I'm looking around for pieces of paper, a piece of name written down, something that was, and I forget the fact that, you know, you can't have your inner monologue on the outside when the mic's on. So I'm like, oh shit, oh, fuck, what's her name? And all of a sudden from the stage I hear LaDonna. Like, okay, guys, let's hear it for LaDonna. And all of a sudden they start going shower, shower, shower. Like, oh God, yeah, I barely know how the mic works now. Okay, guys, looks like you guys want to have some shower time. So okay. And I look over and I see the 2 tape decks, and they both have cassette tapes in them. And I figured, okay, I'll press T1. That must be tape 1. Press tape 1. Press tape play on tape 1. Okay, guys, here we go. And I pressed tape 1. What I didn't know was the DJ earlier in the evening must have faded out on tape 1. So I went, okay, guys, and here we go. And then I press play, and you hear da bum bing ba dum bum. There was only like 3 seconds of music left on that tape. And so I just panicked, went, okay, there you go. She hadn't even gotten in the shower yet. Thanks for coming. That's good. And I basically completely made it up what I was doing. But by the time he showed up at midnight, it was like, okay, guys, remember, while you're feeding those hungry eyes, you can also quench those thirsty lips. We have Highballs 475. We have Shooters 270. Stick around, because coming up next, we have the luscious LaDonna. And it was basically my acting that just kicked in. It's just like, okay, act like a DJ. And so I ended up leaving that job because, well, I got fired because I basically told them I had gotten a job at a real nightclub, and I went back in the morning to quit. But I didn't just quit. I stayed around and had pitchers of beer and drank and drank and drank. And as I got drunker, I kept going, you stupid people working in the Skid Row dump. I got smart. I got out of this, but you guys are suckers. You're lost. You're stuck in the trap. You're never. Apparently people don't like it when you point out the obvious to them all day as you continue to get drunker. And when I reached about my 12th pitcher of beer, so because I've been here probably 7 hours, the bartender, 2 of the waitresses just attacked me. The bartender grabbed a pool cue and snapped it over my head. I went in a massive fight. So that was my welcome to Vancouver. But the place I got a job at, to bring this right around into how I got into that, I'm working as a doorman now at 86th Street Music Hall, which was like on a busy night, it'd have like 2,500 people, and we had like 25 doormen. So it was like massive. It was built for Expo 86, the World Exposition that they had in Vancouver in 86. So I'm working one night, and these 2 women, they come up to me and they say, excuse me, are you in the film industry? I don't even know what that means. No, because you have a face that I think we could do something with. think we could work with you. And they gave me a card. I looked at the card, they walked away, and I thought to myself, bunch of chicks just trying to pick me up, whatever. Put the card in my pocket, got home, threw the card on the desk, never thought of it. 2 weeks later, I'm cleaning up papers and everything. I come across the card. Turns out these two women were talent agents. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. So I called them. 2 days later, I was shooting my first commercial, and I just never looked back. So basically, I'm like the Lana Turner Hollywood story. I was discovered in my version of a drugstore, which was working in a nightclub as a bar, and two women approached me, said, we can do something with you. And I've been an actor ever since. So that was not, I shot my first commercial February 27th, 1990. I had just turned 20.
Wow.
And now I'm a 51-year-old jaded old man, and I'm still doing the same thing. So that's how I got into being an actor. Was I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, I guess.
Wow, nice.
That's a really cool, like, great, like, origin story.
Yeah. Especially that you were just kind of like, they saw you and they were like, wait, this guy. I like that.
And how you just went to Vancouver on a whim. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, taking a bus ride for 4.5 days, you get to know a lot of people by smell, because there's no showers, there's no rest breaks, there's no stops. So you'd be sitting there and be like, where'd Joe go? Oh, he got off in Moose Jaw. It was one of those things. Like, there was about half the bus were people that were going through the entire trip across Canada. So as you get to different cities, people would get off, people get on, but there was a good bunch, about 20 people who stayed for most of the trip. So it became like a little family. We were like rolling beer and bottles of booze back and forth down the aisle. We're playing strip poker, we're listening to the music in the back of the bus. It was like a whole other world back there. And I don't think you get away with that nowadays.
No.
You guys had a party. That's another cool story, right? Yeah.
Was this before or after the semi-pro wrestling career?
Well, to call it a career would be to put more weight on it. It was basically, I helped out as a ring boy, and I got in the ring a few times. It basically lasted like 3 weeks. But you mention it to one publicist. You mention your little stint to a publicist once in your career, and before you know it, you're an ex-pro wrestler for the rest of your life. So, I had a character that I created that I wanted to, if I had continued pursuing it. But at that time I was much heavier and my back was like, please, for the love of God, I can't do this. This is not, plus you get paid $25 a match. And it was like, kill yourself for $25. And I wasn't into that. So, but I noticed someone added on my IMDb page was a professional wrestler. So I was like, okay, sounds good. Works for me.
Yeah.
But I basically screwed around for 3 weeks. But if people want to think of it helps the career, then it helps the career. Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the character I wanted to create, if I had continued with it, was called the Bible Thumper. And I would have wore a black robe. I would have had a big cross around my neck. I had my head shaved like a cross, 2 mohawks to create a cross. And then when I would pin somebody, I would pull out my little New Testament and I'd shove it down his throat. And I thought, boy, that would be a perfect bad guy.
Finishing move right there. Yeah.
Except right now in the States, I'd probably be a good guy. So
Especially down here in the South.
Yeah. So you started out in commercials?
Yeah, commercials.
The first thing I did was a commercial, and I thought I was a star. I was on bus shelters. I was on the back of buses as the commercial aired all the time. And I thought, man, this business is the way to go. And then the next 2 things I did were extra work. And all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not a star anymore. Now I'm getting $5 an hour. And this is not what I thought it would be. And so my career lasted all of 1 commercial and 2 extra work. And then I went back to Ontario for, I had drug dealers looking for me, and that's a whole other story. So I went back to Ontario, lived there for a few more months until I got bored. It's like I had enough taste of Vancouver and the big city life that going back to Ontario just wasn't doing it for me. So I eventually came back out here. And then when I did, I decided, I had fun with my little taste of acting. I think I'm going to pursue this.
Yeah.
And so I went and got some headshots, and I started going to different agencies, and I had recognized, I basically went to 5 or 6 different agents. And by the time I got home, there were like 3 or 4 messages already going, "Hi, we want to book you."
Nice.
So that's how I basically got back into it, got some photos and continued pursuing it. And I probably did about 30 so commercials at the beginning. It's like most of the commercials I've done were non-union. So all of my commercial work was before I joined the Actors Union. And then since I've joined the union, I think I've done 2. So it shows you how many non-union commercials you're watching on TV.
Wow. And tell us about a little bit about the project Breach of Trust.
Yeah, I think that may have been the first feature I did. I think I did a TV movie, Green Dolphin Beat, where I had one line. I was a guy inciting a fight. I was named Giant, and I was screaming. But Breach of Trust was Michael Biehn and the girl who played Leilani Ferrer, who played Sharon Stone's girlfriend in Basic Instinct. The one I worked with them, and I was basically a doorman at a fancy building, and they want to come in, and I tell them they can't go in. So the bad guy ends up shooting me in the head. And that was the first time I got to do special effects stuff and get my head blown onto the wall behind me and everything. But I was also working as a office manager for a company that made air filtration units for the auto body industry. So after I shot my little bit on this film, which was originally called Crash, and then when they released it in the States, they released it as Breach of Trust, but everywhere else in the world, it's called Crash. And so I still get people telling me, "I watched the David Cronenberg Crash. I never saw you anywhere in that." Like, well, you wouldn't have, because I'm not in that film. So I was working as a doorman as a office manager. So when we shot my little scene where I get my head blown off and everything, I went off to do a trade show with my boss in Vegas. And afterwards, we were in California dropping off some stuff to customers. And I get a call on my pager. That's how old I am. And it's from my agent. And she says, "They loved you so much, they've written you into another scene, and we're shooting it tomorrow, and you need to be here." And I'm in Santa Rosa, California, and we drove there. So I said to my boss, "Is there any way we can get back to Vancouver for tomorrow morning?" He says, "Well, if you need to be there, we need to be there." So we drove straight from Santa Rosa back up to Vancouver, dropped me off at the Hotel Vancouver where they were shooting at noon hour, was when they told me to be there. And at 10 p.m. that night, we still hadn't shot my scene. So after racing straight up back to Vancouver, and so I basically was crashing on a bed and sharing a bed with Michael Biehn for most of the day. We were just crashing in this hotel room. And then we shot the scene. So it was exciting because I didn't work with Michael Biehn. I ended up working with an actor named Vladimir Kulich, and I ended up working with Kim Coates. And
Kim Coates, yeah,
very, very, very.
He's always plays those creepy characters.
He plays the best characters, man.
Yeah. Waterworld, man, he played that weird ass character.
Carpool Sons of Anarchy. I mean, come on.
Client, yeah. Michael Biehn too, of course. Terminator. I'm sure you were a fan of Terminator, right?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, he had on I remember when I first met him after I had done my first scene. I'm at the AD trailer, and he's wearing a Sequest DSV hat. So I guess he was on that show. And he says, "So what'd you do today?" And I said, "Well, I just did my death scene. They killed me." And he looked at me, he goes, "God, what kind of film is going to kill an amazing guy like you?" And I said, "I don't know, some low budget indie with some non-actors as leads. I don't know." I was basically throwing it right back at him because he was basically mocking me. So I threw it right back at him and was mocking him. So that's why a week and a half later, when we're at the Hotel Vancouver, I'm crashed out on this bed, and all of a sudden I feel a pain in my back. It turns out it's Michael Biehn. He dove into the room and he kneed me in the back, and he goes, "Okay, Ernst, off the bed. This bed's for stars." And I just remember looking up at him going, "Oh, that's why I'm on it."
Good one. Good.
Oh,
So that was my first experience with working in the film, and that was also Robert Vince and come on, my brain just died. The Vince brothers. What was the other Vince brothers' name? Oh, I'm going to hell. Robert Vince ended up doing all the Air Bud movies, and so I ended up doing the Air Bud Spikes Back and Santa, the Search for Santa Paws and Space Buddies with him, and then William Vince, his brother William, went off and did more serious films, and he produced Capote, which I did with him. So it's funny how you start off doing these low budget erotic thrillers, and one goes into children's films and the other one goes into Academy Award type films, but everybody starts somewhere. That was basically my experience working on that film. It was a couple days work, but I jumped in, head first into the feature world, and that was a good experience.
Nice.
So yeah, breach of trust.
Yeah, I love things where you're only there for a couple days, but it feels like you have like a month's worth of just great memories.
Yeah.
Someone just
almost every film I've worked on, it's like the stuff that you end up with on camera is the least of your memories. Everything that you remember is the time between takes, is all the time sitting around, standing around, doing nothing, and all the conversations and all the things that happened. That's what you end up remembering. And that's why it's hard to watch films that you've been in, because when you watch the scenes, you're like, oh, that's the day so-and-so was sick. And oh yeah. Oh, why they used take 2, take 3 was the better take. They should have, and that was the day that so-and-so came out. Do you remember when his daughter came in and they were doing that little thing? It was a happy birthday and everybody was sick. So it's like, I can't watch anything that I've been in until probably a dozen times until I can get all that stuff out of my system and just watch the film for the film itself.
Yeah, we work on set from time to time because we do like production work, so we can we do locations. So we did a movie, Brian Banks, where every time we see a location, we're just like, oh, that place, because we had to be there before anybody would leave.
That was where I had to walk half a mile to tell this guy to turn his bulldozer off. Oh yeah.
So but with you, it's probably just a wealth of memories like that. I'm sure. I mean, I cannot imagine. And so let's go into Dudley Do-Right.
Dudley Do-Right is probably one of the most fun I've had shooting a film, because first of all, when I auditioned for that, I went in to meet Hugh Wilson, the director, who happened to also be the writer, thankfully. And I went in for a four-line part, an audition, and it was basically, I think the lines were, yes, sir, no, sir, right away, sir, okay, sir. And we had so much fun in the audition. He said, how's the next 2-3 months look for you? I said, I'm open, fine. He goes, I really like you. I like your energy. I think you're very funny. He goes, why don't you take this back and we'll see what I can write for you. And before I know it, I'm Shane. Yep. I'm one of the lead bad guys. I'm in the entire film, and all started from an audition for a 4-line part that would have been 1 day's work. And I ended up working like 30 days on that film. And I had so much fun. Alfred Molina as Snidely Whiplash. His mustache was fake. So whenever he would tell a joke or whenever anyone would make him laugh, he'd always have to hold the mustache on because it would come off when he'd laugh. So that's my biggest memory, is just making him laugh, and then
he was hilarious.
Alfred Molina is a legend.
He went so hardcore with that.
Oh yeah,
role. He was so deep in character.
He could have underplayed it, but he really just became this cartoon. It was awesome.
He really and then
he's a legend.
The saddest part of that film, the experience of making it was the best ever. But the sad part was the film that Hugh Wilson wrote and the film that we made was a nostalgic piece looking back at something that was famous in the 60s. So first of all, kids wouldn't have known what Dudley Do-Right was. This film was made for the parents and the grandparents of the kids who remembered the cartoon Dudley Do-Right in the 60s. So the film was made from an adult point of view. It had adult jokes. It had, it had gay bartenders in Miami. It had, it was a very adult oriented film. And when he presented it to Universal, they were like, oh, what's this? they'd have test screenings and people come back and go, well, there's jokes about the New York Times. My kids don't know what the New York Times is. That's not funny. And there's jokes. And he's like, well, it's not meant for kids. Kids don't know who Dudley Do-Right, but because Universal had already started spending money building Snidely Whiplash's some big water park at the Universal theme park, they'd already started building Whiplash Falls, which is some big water park ride. I think they thought this was going to be another George of the Jungle. This was going to be another kids film, and that's not what Hugh Wilson had written. So they basically made him rewrite like 40% of the movie and reshot it in LA. So all the stuff in the movie with the horse farting and the horse sticking out his tongue and all of the scenes with the floorboards flopping up and hitting people in the heads and all of the slapstick stuff, that was all added. And all of the adult humor and all of the adult oriented stuff and like the father, there was a whole side story of Nell's father, the Sarah Jessica Parker's character, her father was moved down to Florida and was living at this club working as a bartender, and he didn't realize that he was staying at a gay bar, and there was this whole. But the funniest part is after they reshot the thing, and the problem was they made it stupid. They dumbed it down for kids. The problem was now you have a movie that parents and adults who remember Dudley Do-Right aren't interested in because it's just a bunch of silly slapstick. Kids who would be interested in it have no idea what a Dudley Do-Right is and why they should be interested in it. So you end up, I think the movie was like a $70 million budget. I think it ended up making like $2 million, and basically it just did not go as planned. But the funniest part is if you go to the children's section and you find the novelization of Dudley Do-Right, it's based on the original script of the film.
Oh, I got to get a copy of that. Yeah.
So you have a book that's made for kids,
yeah,
and the version in it is the adult version of the movie. So if the kid watching the movie reads that book, he's like, this is not I don't remember anybody getting stuck in a crate and shipped away. And it's an entirely different movie in the novelization, which I just thought was funny. It's like, because they start that process so early on, they would have started with the original script. So now you have a movie that was dumbed down for kids, and the novelization for the children is based on the adult version of the movie. So it's silly things like that happens behind the scenes, and people are like, Hugh Wilson, worst director ever. Well, he didn't want to make the movie that was released. He was forced to make the movie that was released. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame that, too many people with, especially now with the internet, everybody has an opinion. But yeah, the problem is 9 times out of 10, it's not an informed opinion. Mm-hmm. So you're like, oh, this stupid movie. Okay, well, what does that mean? Some movies are stupid because they were meant to be stupid. Other films are not stupid at all. It's the person who's watching them that 9 times out of 10 that is stupid and is not getting the fact. But Dudley Do-Right was just was a blast to make. It was so much fun getting to do the big dance number with Sarah Jessica Parker and getting to throw her up on my shoulders. And that all became it. I ended up getting wrapped. Yeah, I ended up getting wrapped. And I looked at the schedule and I saw that the next week they were doing this big dance number and everything. And I went up to Hugh Wilson on the day that I was being wrapped. And I said, how come Shane's not in the big dance number? He says, well, can you dance? And so I just started doing a little jig in the spot and everything. He goes, okay, leave it with me. Yeah, leave it with me. So I go home. I'm thinking I'm wrapped. I get a call that says, hi, a Teamster will be at your house tomorrow morning at 9 for dance practice. What? So next thing you know, I spend the next 2 days at dance rehearsal learning all the big dance move and everything. And I end up working another week on the film, all because I just said, well, how come Shane's not at the dance? Next thing you know, I'm in 4 more scenes. And lots of times it's just, if you make a good connection with the director, and especially when the director is also the writer and the executive producer, put it out there. You've already made your presence known on the film. So if you want to be in the dance number, just tell them you want to be in the dance number. I find that, what's the worst they can say? No, we're good.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. And Hugh Wilson, like, that's he was a big director. Didn't he do Police Academy?
Police Academy, WKRP in Cincinnati, did the First Wives Club, Blast from the Past.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So we'd worked with Brenden before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had just finished doing Blast from the Past with Brenden.
Well,
So they had a special working relationship, and it was there were so many. I mean, I shared a trailer with Alex Rocco, Mo Green from Godfather, so it was him, and there Louis Mastillo, Jack Kaler. There's so many people in that film. Jed Reese, but it's just such a shame that the movie he made was not the movie that was released. That would have been a much better experience. But at the same time, my coolest experience was going to see a film, knowing that the Dudley Do-Right trailer was going to be in front of this film, so I could see the trailer for the first time. I don't even remember what the film was, but I remember watching the trailer and seeing myself in the trailer and seeing the film and like, oh my God, it's going to be so amazing. And then when the lights came up at the end of the film, Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon were sitting in front of me in the theater. So I was like, oh my God, they saw my movie. They saw me in the trailer. I think he was up here shooting Mission to Mars, but it was just exciting to know that they saw me in the trailer.
Yeah, it's like a big moment for you as an actor. You're like, whoa, it's like this is really happening.
Like, being at the film festival, watching oh my God, have you ever seen this film? It'll blow your mind. It's called Ken Park. You ever heard of that film?
Yeah, he's seen it.
I've seen a lot of that movie. It was online.
Yeah.
It's
the director always Larry Clark. Yeah.
So I went to see Ken Park with my wife at the film festival.
Oh, wow.
That was a bizarre experience. And halfway through the film, I'm watching the film and I look over, and there in full Wolverine sideburns and everything is Hugh Jackman, because they were shooting X-Men in Vancouver. And I look over and he's sitting there watching Ken Park. So now for the second half of Ken Park, it's like, I'm watching Ken Park. I'm watching Hugh Jackman watch Ken Park. I'm watching Ken Park. I'm watching Hugh Jackman watch Ken Park.
That's a weird movie to see with Hugh Jackman. Yeah.
That's a weird movie to see with your wife.
Yeah, there's a scene where a dude literally masturbates on screen. It's like, what the fuck? Now I think it's never been released on DVD or anything.
Yeah, that was right? James Ransome.
James Ransome. Yeah, he went on to be a big star. Now he's in one of the stars of Chapter 2.
So,
yeah.
Well, do you remember a show? Do you know who Bill Fagerbach is?
Oh yeah,
Patrick Star.
Yeah. So he was in Ken Park, and and I worked with him on Space Buddies, and we're sitting around one day, and I go, I saw a movie a couple of years ago with you at the film festival. He goes, really? What film? I said, Ken Park. Oh, where did you? How the what? He's like, he couldn't believe that anybody had seen that film. He thought that film just came and went. I go, no, I was at the film festival. I said, he goes, how to? He goes, you get a job, you take a job. I don't think he knew totally what the end result of that film. I just remember the opening shot of that film was the kid at the skate park skating around the film park, setting up his camera, sitting down, like, where is this going? And
Yeah. It was weird.
That was an intense movie. But yeah, if you want an experience, watch Hugh Jackman dressed as the Wolverine watching Ken Park. That's a memory.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah.
And of course, we got to ask, what it was like working with Brenden Fraser.
Oh yeah, back to Dudley Do-Right.
Yeah, Dudley Brendan Fraser. He was at a really good point in his life because he had just gotten. I think there was a week where he went off and got married.
Oh.
And so we ended up shooting stuff with more Snidely stuff while he was gone on his honeymoon for a week. And then when he came back, his wife was there and she had her own little chair and she'd sit next to him and everything. Sadly, they're not together anymore. But he was at a good point in his life, and he was coming off of a lot of stuff and going into a lot of. He was like I don't think Dudley Do-Right did him any favors, sadly, but
it really mimics the tone of the final product really mimics the tone of George of the Jungle, which
the studio was, I guess, really trying to follow, because George of the Jungle made like over 100 million. It was a huge, really trying to go for that, and they're like,
and they had Brendan Fraser, so I think and at that point in this, like you said.
But what that had that Dudley didn't have was the song. was the theme song. Everybody knows the song. Even if you've never seen George of the Jungle, you know the song.
And, you know,
And
yeah, even as 90s kids, we
Yeah.
knew George of the Jungle because we used to get up really early in the morning and they would show it.
Yeah.
Like right
Yeah.
at dawn.
Like we were the rerun
So
generation.
see, even us, like even millennials know going into George of the Jungle, we knew that, like in the song, of course, yeah. But I don't
But
think
Dudley Do-Right, nobody knew what Dudley Do-Right was. It was a side character on Rocky and Bullwinkle, you know.
right, it was a spin-off. Oh yeah.
And even Rocky and Bullwinkle, when they made that film with what was it, Jason Alexander and Rene Russo and Robert De Niro, I don't think people knew what to expect of that either. Because I think that's another film from it's a different era and a different audience. But no, Brenden was great. Really enjoyed working with him. But like I said, because I was one of Snidely's lead bad guys, most of our scenes were just, you know, I was in Alfred Molina land. And so we did a lot. The only time we ever saw Brenden really was, you know, passing him on set or hanging out sitting around on the director's chairs and everything. But no, he was I do remember though walking down Robson Street in Vancouver, and I'm walking alone, and all of a sudden I'm hearing, you know, when you're walking down the street and you can hear conversations of other people that are walking alongside you, you're catching parts of and so I'm walking with my friend. We just came back from seeing a movie. It may have been a Chucky film, it was one of those. And I start hearing, what should I do? I just keep hearing the word purple nurple. I'm like slowly starting to slow down my walk because I'm like, I want to hear what the hell is going on. I'm hearing this conversation. What do you think we should do? What do you think I should do? I think I should give him a purple nurple. What do you think of purple nurple? And I keep hearing the word purple nurple, purple. I'm like, what the hell? And all of a sudden I stop at the corner and I feel someone grab my ass. And I turn around and it's Brendan Fraser and he goes, hi. So that's my Brendan Fraser story. It's like, how many people can say they were fondled on the street by Brendan Fraser? I was. But my friend who was with me didn't know that I was working with him at the time. So he was just like, that's George of the Jungle? What the hell?
That's Encino Man. He just grabbed you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah. She was great. After the one dance rehearsal, I remember we went back to a place that was called Goodfellas, a restaurant, and we had a big cast dinner for the people that were at Hugh and choreographer. He's a big famous director now, and of course it just dropped out of my head. It'll come back. But we all went for a big dinner, and then afterwards we went back to the hotel across the street where they were staying, and we all started playing a game called Celebrity, where you put a bunch of names on pieces of paper and put them in a big bowl, and then everybody pulls a name out of the bowl and then has to get the other person to say the name of the person without saying so I ended up getting partnered with Sarah Jessica. So her and I were a team. And the funniest thing I remember is the clue was David Letterman. And I remember her picking up the piece of paper and she goes, like Leno, but funnier. And it's funny the things you remember. I just remembered her going like, and then I think so I remember us playing Celebrity that night. And when we did the big dance number, she kept saying to me, oh, Ernst, I hope I'm not too heavy for you. I think she must've been like 80 pounds or something. I kept throwing her up on my shoulder. And I said to her, oh, honey, I've had hairstyles that have weighed more than you. And all of a sudden her hairstylist comes running over and says, really? And I said, hairstyles, not hairstylists, hairstyles. And I remember it's funny the things you remember. I remember his name was Kabuki. His name was Richard Ogden, but I think he was a drag performer and his drag name was Kabuki. And I think she had brought him up with her from working on Sex and the City in New York. But it's funny how those are the things I remember. It's like comments and things. But yeah, she was great. She was fun to be around with. I remember I ended up paying for that dinner at Goodfellas, Mr. Canadian actor. We're sitting there having wine, we're big table, probably about 20 people at the table. And I got up to go to the bathroom and I walked by the the wait staff, and I said, can you put this order for that table on my card? When I come back from the washroom, I'll sign it. So she put the thing through. The bill must have been about 3 feet long. And I think it was like a $989 food bill. And I put it on my credit card. So later on in the night, and they go, okay, it's time to pay up. And the waitress says, no, everything's fine. Mr. Harth took care of it. And the entire table of people, all these millionaire actors, they all turn around, they look and they go, Ernst, no, you can't, you can't. I go, look, I was getting inside, I was starting to get a little perturbed. It was like, I'm not a bum. I'm working on this movie with you. I'm in control of my own senses here. I know what I'm doing. If I want to pay for it, I'll pay for it. And I said, look, pay for the tip, because she especially felt bad, Sarah Jessica, because she had bought like a bunch of fancy bottles of wine for the table that she was going to pay for. And I ended up paying for the whole thing. So that must have stuck with them, because at the wrap party, all of a sudden I hear a voice and I look up and there's Sarah Jessica and Matthew Broderick, her husband, who had been shooting Inspector Gadget in Pittsburgh, flew into Vancouver for the wrap party. And she goes, there he is. And I see her dragging him towards me. And she goes, this is Ernst. This is the guy I was telling you about, the guy who paid for the dinner. And I look at him and I go, you look familiar. I said, craft services? And he says, yeah. I said, those artichoke bites, those are yours, right? He goes, yeah, did you like them? And we just started going off on this whole thing about the craft service table and artichoke bites. And Sarah Jessica Parker was just looking at the two of us like, that was the worst thing I could have done, was introduce you two, because now we're just going off and pretending that he worked for craft services and that he's not Matthew Broderick. But no, that was a great film. And man, that's 23 years ago already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in 3rd grade when it came out, as I recall. I remember some kids in class being like, I want to see Dudley Do-Right, because like all the trailers were just everywhere.
So some kids were responding to it. Yeah.
And
well, that's good. But yeah, I think those are the type of films that more people ended up seeing on cable, cable or VHS or on DVD.
Yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite bits of you in that movie, before we move on, is when Dudley Do-Right shot his initials into the door, and it's Alfred Moon is like, who is this? And everybody's shouting out like who it could be, and you say Dom DeLuise. I thought that was really funny. Yeah. I just remember the one guy goes, Dan Rather. It's not even 2 D's, you idiot. But the joke was, there was some people, it was like the one guy says, the actress name, I can't even remember, something DeMaurier. And I said to Hugh, I said, nobody knows who that is. I don't even know who that is. And it turns out she's some famous novelist from the 30s or something. But yeah, Dom DeLuise, that got in the trailer. That was my favorite bit. Dom DeLuise.
Right.
Yeah, that was a fun film. And I got to make a lot of good friends on that. And Jed Reese, who was one of the bad guys, he ended up being in Galaxy Quest. And he was on the Chris Isaak show, played the
and so you were on the Chris Isaak show.
Yeah, I did. It was funny. I did one episode where I got called, Mike Roll, who directed that episode. I'd worked with him in a film called Zachariah Farted. And the film is way better than the title. But it shows you the choice. You can put a word in a title. You better be ready to take what comes because of it. And you can have an amazing film that ends up not going anywhere because people are scared off by the title.
Yeah.
And especially when the Zachariah Farted refers to like 10 seconds of something in the film. It's like, you're killing your film by referring to a 10-second gag in the film by putting farted, because immediately people think, oh, it's going to be like an American Pie or something, when it ended up becoming second at the AFI festival to Life is Beautiful, But so Mike Roll, who I had worked with as the director a few times, I get a call saying he wants me to come out and play on this thing. And so I just went out and I didn't know what the part was or anything. And it turned out that Chris Isaak was running for government, and he was doing a campaign, and he was putting up a bunch of signs, and he just wanted me to come down, and after Chris Isaak is finished polishing his sign at this bus bench, I just come down and sit down in front of his face. And, it's like, that's it. Yeah. but you know, you're not going to turn down work when somebody says, come out and work on the Chris Isaak show. And my wife loves Chris Isaak. And what I didn't tell her was, because she wanted to come to set with me that day, but she had a business meeting to attend to. So what I didn't tell her was, is on the way to work, I stopped at the record store, got her the CD, his new CD, which had just come out that day, got the CD. And after we did our scene, I got him to sign it for her. And he drew a little caricature of himself and everything and signed it for her and everything. And so that was the first surprise. The second surprise was I had borrowed her camera. She had one of the first digital cameras, so old, in fact, that there was no film in it. You'd have to stick your floppy disk in the camera and take the pictures. And then you could get, usually depending on the quality of the photo, you could get like 5 photos per disc. So you'd have to carry a stack of floppy disks with you. But this was like one of the first digital cameras. And so I had taken this with me to set to take pictures. And at one point, Mike, the director who I knew, says, Ernst, I noticed you have a lens cap on that camera. We need a camera in this one scene, but we need one that has a lens cap. Can we rent your camera? So not only did my wife get a CD signed by Chris Isaak, but she got to have her camera in the episode, and it's Chris Isaak taking pictures. This couple asks if they can have a picture, and Chris Isaak thinks they want a picture with him. But the fact is they want him to take the picture, and now he can't figure out the lens cap and everything. And so I ended up getting a rental for that camera. So my wife, what I didn't tell them was that there was a disc in the camera. So when I got home, I showed my wife all these pictures of Chris Isaak and this other actress. And she's like, did they know that the disc was in the camera? I said, no, they just thought it was just a dummy camera. Because every time he's pressing the photo, I'm the only person that has all the photos that were taken that day on that camera. So it was a nice surprise for her. Not only did she get to get a CD signed by him, but she also got to have her camera in a Chris Isaak episode with Chris Isaak getting pictures taken of him. And we've been fans of him ever since, but it's like such a nothing part, but it so much came from it. You know, I got to get the CD and get the thing and everything, but it was basically just come on down, hang out, and sit in front of Chris's face. So that's how that happened. The Candidate, I think the episode was called. He was running for city council or the parking commission or something. Oh yeah, he was running for parking commissioner because his favorite spot where he liked to park when he went surfing, all of a sudden it was now a red zone, and he didn't want that. So he decided he was going to run for parking commissioner so he could get his favorite surf parking back.
Man, that show was so funny.
Yeah.
I remember the episode where the Goo Good all show up and then Robbie Take-Tack just pulls out all his dildos because apparently Robbie Take-Tack walks around with like 6 dildos in his pocket at all times. Just the narrative structuring of that was just hilarious.
It was one where he gets stuck in a bomb shelter because the lever blows off. I always liked that one.
Yeah, that show was hilarious. Let's see. Oh, Blacktop with Kristen Davis, Lachlan Monroe, and Meat Loaf.
Yeah, that changed that movie. I did one day's work on that film, but that film changed my life. Blacktop. There we go.
I like Kristen Davis is my all-time favorite actress. Actually, in 2015, she came to Memphis, and we were still getting finishing up our master's in film at the time. So, and I find out it's like for a documentary she did about saving the elephants, and so I emailed the woman, the coordinator putting it on. I'm like, I'm a film student in town. About to have my master's soon. You guys need any help? I'll work for free. She's like, actually, we don't need any help. And I'm like, crap. And she's like, but we do need help with the silent auction. And I'm like,
yeah, he was obsessed with Kristen Davis growing up.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
like, finding out she was in town, he was like,
yeah, I was like, I'm going to.
No, he's like, I'm not going to go. I can't handle it. We're like, our family
called
me. Have to go.
They're like, yeah. So
and
I bought a ticket.
Like yelled at him. He's like, you better go to that event.
Yeah. So I buy a ticket.
So he ends up swindling away, to get a position helping out.
I'm volunteering the whole time. I don't really end up helping at all with the silent auction. I help out with a bunch of other stuff, and then toward the end, they're like, oh, she's doing like meet and greets with people who pay $500 to like and stuff like that, like just as donations to like the cause for the elephants, which is great. But I was like, I volunteered, so I figure I'm entitled to a free meet and greet, right? I didn't tell anybody, and so I wait in line, and then like people are writing down emails right before. I'm like, oh no, they're gonna see my name in the email, know that I'm like not on like the roster or whatever, or like on the list. And I was like, screw it. I turned around, I was like, this is your one chance to meet your like favorite actress of all time, your teenage dream. I had like posters on my wall. I used to watch the show all the time with
and we go see all our movies.
Yeah. And then so I just turned around and got back in line, and then it happened. I got a big photo somewhere. We'll cut away to it of me and her, and that was just a surreal experience. She's the sweetest woman ever. I told her favorite actress. And I said, I'm a filmmaker too. Maybe one day our paths will cross again. And she was really, really supportive. She said, keep at it, and just gave me some good advice. And that was surreal. So how was your time?
How was your experience on Black?
Well, I remember I ended up sitting next to her in the makeup trailer, and I had come in, and I'm sitting there, she's getting done. I sit down next to her and she goes, "Oh my God." And I look at her like, "What?" Well, what I didn't know was as I'm walking to the makeup trailer, a bird must have shat on my head, because she's like, "Oh my God." And I look in the mirror and I see a white streak. And so immediately I didn't think twice about it. So I just started brushing it. And now she's even more freaked out because I'm brushing it with my hand. And so that was my big moment with her. It was because my scene was basically with Lachlan Monroe, because he's playing her boyfriend.
Like owner,
the club promoter or something.
Yeah. And
yeah.
The one scene, the director says to me, "Okay, on this scene, on this take, I want you to manhandle Lachlan. I want you to grab him like a bear and throw." So the look on his face when I grab him and a bear hug and push him up towards me is legitimate, because he had no idea I was going to do that.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was probably 200 pounds heavier than I am now. I was almost 600 pounds when I shot that film. But what I mean by that film changed my life is because I worked on that film. A lot of these films, what you don't realize is that these films, they come to town for a month, they shoot, and then they leave. And you never know if you're going to see the film. You never know what happens to these films. But what I did know was that it was going to be an HBO film. We didn't have HBO in Canada at the time, but I wanted to see this film. So after it had been out, I went online and I thought, well, how am I going to find a copy of this film? And this was before there was going to be on DVD or anything. It was just a TV movie. And I thought, well, Meatloaf's a big enough name. He must have a fan club or an internet presence or something. So I found the official international Meatloaf fan club, and they had a message board. So I went through about 6 months worth of messages looking for somebody that had mentioned Blacktop. And there was lots of mentions of Black Dog, but there were no mentions of Blacktop. And all of a sudden I found 2 emails where they had mentioned, and the emails were basically like, "Hey, Meat saw Blacktop, another winner, way to go," that kind of an email. Of the 2, only one had left an email address. So I emailed the person and I said, "Hi, I'm Ernst Harth. I'm the club manager in this film. I see that you watched it, and I'm hoping that maybe you taped it, because I live in Canada. We don't have the film here. And if you taped it, I would be willing to pay the shipping and send you a tape and pay for the tape and everything, and just send it off." It was like a shot in the dark, hoping for the best. And this person must have thought, I'm some sort of, pirate or looking for, or maybe I'm with the government and I'm trying to track down people who are pirating videos and taping videos or something. So after it turned out it was a woman in Pittsburgh, and she had taped the movie. I get an email back, "Oh my God, I'm so honored and thrilled to get an email from one of the actors in the movie. Yes, I did tape it, and I'd love to send you a copy." And she sent me a copy. And then 2 weeks later, I had another movie, Voyage of the Unicorn, that was airing on a network that I've never heard of, the Odyssey Network, which I don't think exists anymore. And she happened to have that, so she taped that for me. And we started talking back and forth and chatting and messaging. And one morning, she started asking me questions about being an actor. And as you know, actors hate to talk about themselves. So this went on for weeks. And and one morning I get up and there's a message that says, grab yourself a coffee and then click this link. So I grab myself a coffee, I click the link. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that she worked for an internet company. She was a project manager and a web designer. She had taken all the film, all those stories I had shared with her, all the anecdotes. She'd taken all the photos that I'd shared with her over this few weeks, and she put together the unofficial Ernst Harth website. And I was so blown away that a stranger would put all this work into it that I said, why don't we work on this together and make this the official Ernst Harth website? And so we did, and we started chatting more and sharing more and talking more. And then one Wednesday, I sent her an email and I said, "Okay, here's the deal. We can go back and forth with all these messages and all these emails and all the chatting that we're doing." And this was back in the day of the AOL Messenger, was basically how everybody talked. And I said, "But the only way we're going to know if we're truly compatible for each other is if you come here this weekend." This is on a Wednesday. She's in Pittsburgh. I'm in Vancouver. And I just sent that email off. And five minutes later, I get an email that says, other than air and hotel, what do I need to know? I was like, uh-oh, you better want this because it's happening now. So that weekend, she showed up. I met her at her hotel. We spent the entire 5 days together. And she went back to the States. And then she came back 6 months later. She rented a condo in Yaletown in downtown Vancouver. She was there for a month, 2 weeks into her stay. I said, I don't know what's going to happen with us, but you have a 6-month visitor visa. And if you want to move in with me after your lease is up here at this condo, I can promise you the best 6 months of your life. That was February 22nd that she moved in with me. May 19th, I proposed, and June 2nd, we got married. And in this coming June, we'll have been married 20 years.
Wow,
man,
I had no idea you had such a connection to that movie.
That's how I met my wife. I went online looking for a video and I found a wife.
This back
and
forth.
you dug so deep just to find somebody to get a copy, and you found her.
That's like fate, man.
That's fate, man.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah.
And our joke is most people go on the internet looking for a wife and they find a video. We did it the other way around.
Yeah.
But when you realize all the what ifs, because she wasn't gonna tape it, she was gonna watch it, but then she had to run some errands, so then she ended up taping it. And if she hadn't taped it, then there wouldn't have been any reason for her to get in touch with. It's like all the different things.
Yeah.
She hadn't seen Meatloaf,
Perfect,
but because she saw a bunch of commercials for his Storytellers tour, she decided that'd be fun to go to. So she went there. She didn't get a program, but she saw the person in front of her had a program. So she grabbed the program and asked her if she could look at it. When she looked at it, that's where she saw the website address for his fan club. So it's like all these little what ifs. If she hadn't have grabbed this, if she hadn't have done this yet. And yet here we are in June, it'll be 20 years marriage, all because I wanted to get a copy of myself working with Meatloaf.
Yep. Congratulations, you guys, man.
And thank you. My wife, we joke, my mom used to always say, you're never going to meet anyone if you don't leave your room. Well, I didn't even have to get dressed and I met someone.
Oh, man.
And the crazy part is that that's when I was at my heaviest. So it's like, if someone can see you at your heaviest and still fall for you, and it was all because, over the internet, you get to know someone from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see how the person ticks, and you get, and when she came over here that first weekend, the first 5 days that she was here, I started showing her old home movies of me and my grandparents and stuff. And she says right then is when she knew. She says, because if you're on like a first date and you start showing old home movies of you and your grandmother, that you're a different type of person. You're not all about you. And we hit it off. And now she works from home. I work from home. Our office desks are right beside each other. So we're beside each other all day. Still not sick of each other.
That's rare. Yeah.
That's good.
And she wrote a book of poetry that was on Amazon. It's called Her Rambling Heart, A Journey Through Love. And it's basically poetry and essay about love and basically how we came together and all her relationships leading up to me. And then in 2013, I wrote a one-man show for the Vancouver Fringe Festival called The Rock Star and Me, about how Meatloaf played into my life at 3 different times in my life. And I didn't realize that he was like this guidepost in my life. He played an important role in my childhood. He played an important role in my adolescence. And then he played a role in me finding my wife. And so I wrote a show about that. I think there's a clip on YouTube from that show. It's a scene about me talking about going for ice cream with my father, which wasn't about going for ice cream. But yeah, Meatloaf was someone I grew up with as a father figure, because even though I had a dad, my dad was a bit of an alcoholic and had no interest in my flights of fancy. And I spent a lot of time in my bedroom by myself, and I'd play, in my head a lot. I would have a tape recorder and I'd, record talk shows, and I'd be all the guests on the talk show, and I'd be the guy hosting the talk show. And so I spent a lot of time in my bedroom entertaining myself. And one day my dad, just to briefly tie in how Meatloaf, my dad comes to my door and he goes, "Hey, I saw this when I went to get some smokes. I think you'll like him. He's fat like you," and throws the Bat Out of Hell album on my bed. And so in 1978, he buys me this album of this guy because he's fat, and he's fat like you. You'll like him. No other reason other than, and it wasn't even that he wanted to buy me a gift. He was getting a pack of smokes, and they just happened to have albums on the thing next to him. But what ended up happening was, because here's this, to me, was this icon. Here's this guy, he's got a tuxedo on and he's got a night. The biggest thing for me was that here's this big, heavy guy and he's being himself and he's got his hand on this girl's ass and he's like Mr. Rockstar. And it's like, wow, I could be that. And so the album, Bat Out of Hell, would sit on my nightstand and I would lay in bed at night and talk to the album cover. How sad is that? So sad. But he ended up becoming like a father figure. It's like I would talk to the picture of Meatloaf on the album, and he ended up, when I was alone by myself, and some people write in a diary, I talked to an album cover.
Oh man!
And you ever get to talk to Meatloaf about how much of a fan you were?
And then on set with him, must have been surreal after all that.
Well, yeah, but the second time I met with him, I had built up this relationship with him as like a father figure, as someone that I could talk to about basically life. And then when I basically got kicked out of the house when I was 17, 18, moved on my own, and I ended up going on student welfare because I was still going to school. And I was like, I gotta figure out what to do with my life. I should get a job, or I should go somewhere or do something. And I went to this nightclub that was in town, Stages, and I walked in and I said, I'm looking for a job as a doorman. I had just turned 19, and so I was old enough to get a job because the drinking age is 19 up here. So what is it where you are?
21.
Yeah. That's funny. My dad used to tell me, he said the drinking age here was 18, and then when he turned 18, they changed it to 19. And when he became 19, they changed it to 21, and when he became 21, they put it back to 19. So he's just like, I'm never going to get to legally drink.
My mom, I think she was 18, and then it went like a year.
Went to 21.
Went to 21 while she was like still 19 or 20, like in the 60s. So
I go to this bar and they say that I can go sit down and fill out this application. So I'm filling out this application, and all of a sudden I hear a noise, and I look up, and Meatloaf, the Meatloaf, is on stage in this little 400-seat nightclub. And he's getting ready to do a sound check. I had no idea that he was in town, never mind performing at this bar. I happen to be sitting now in this bar, filling out this application. And all of a sudden I hear a cappella, he's singing Ave Maria on the microphone, a song that I've looked on the internet, I've searched forever. There's no mention of him ever singing this song anywhere, but he was doing his sound check and he was singing Ave Maria a cappella. And me, as this person who has grown up with him as like a father figure, I look up and it was just like this light from heaven above him, and he's singing, and I'm just crying. I'm 19 years old. I'm sitting in this dark nightclub crying, and Meatloaf is singing. And I ended up getting hired, and my first job was doing backstage security for Meatloaf at this club. So talking about getting a chance to talk to him, the only conversation I had with him was me and another doorman are carrying his wardrobe box down the stairs. The dressing room was under the stage, so you had to go down these stairs. So we're carrying this big box down these stairs. I'm at the bottom and the other guy's at the top, and we're carrying this down. And all of a sudden, somebody from inside the club calls the other doorman's name, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm coming," and just starts leaving. And I've got this big wardrobe box that he's now let go of. And so I basically go tumbling down the stairs with this Meatloaf's wardrobe box. Thing lands on my foot. I'm cursing and swearing. I'm jumping up and down, swearing. And I go, what am I supposed to do now? And I look over, and Meatloaf is sitting in the dressing room. He looks up at me and goes, "Limp?" So, and then next thing I know, I get called away. And that turns out to be my only conversation with Meatloaf. One word, limp. And so later on, when I got hired on this film and I show up on set, I didn't know it was a Meatloaf film. So I show up on set and I'm looking at the call sheet and I see that the number one person on the call sheet is Meatloaf. I was like blown away. Like, this is too much. And here I am again, we're shooting a scene in another nightclub and Meatloaf is in this club with me. And they're bringing me to set and Meatloaf comes walking, the door opened, Meatloaf, he's smoking the biggest cigar I've ever seen. He's leaving set, he's walking towards me and I'm about to just like tell him how much he's meant to me and how he's such a role model and this whole experience of working at this and my brain starts going around in circles. I don't even know my name, who I am, where I am, and nothing. And I go, I worked with you at a club in Kitchener. That was the only thing I could get to come out. And he looks at me, he goes, Stages. And that was the name of the club. And I was so blown away by the fact that he remembered the name of the club that now I'm just standing there with my mouth open, staring at him. And he must have thought, oh, this guy's a weirdo. And he just left. So my two big times meeting Meatloaf ended up in one-word conversations, Limp and Stages. So it was like, at some point, I got it. They did an article on in the Vancouver Sun about how I met my wife and the whole Meatloaf connection and everything. And I've sent that article to him, and I sent a copy of some of the poems from my wife's thing. I've sent things to him, but I don't know if he's ever heard her. I've shared the story with Lachlan Monroe, who I worked with on that film, and I don't know if he's ever passed it on. But it's amazing how you never know who's going to mean something in your life. Yeah. And if you had told me that Meatloaf was how I was going to find my wife, I would never have known. So one day's work on a silly film turned out to change my entire life. Man. So that's what Blacktop means to me.
Yeah. Wow, for sure.
That's all. As fans of yours, that's awesome to hear that. That's a cool story.
Great story. Yeah, it's so much. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. So how about working with a legend like Leslie Nielsen in the film Camouflage?
Oh, Leslie Nielsen. That was my favorite story with Leslie Nielsen. He was, I think, 74 at the time. And, I had known him like everyone else from all of the Naked Gun movies and all of those, those spoof movies that he did. I didn't even know until later that he had an entire career of playing bad guys in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, yeah.
So when I worked with him, there's one scene where I'm supposed to go over and I'm supposed to rough him up and I'm supposed to put my arm around him and I'm supposed to lead him my way. And so we do the first take and I'm real ginger and I'm being, this is a Hollywood legend. I don't want to rough him up. I'm a big guy. So I put my arm around him and I walk away with him and they yell cut. And I see him walking up towards me and he says, is that how you're going to do it? I said, yeah. He goes, well, okay, we're going to do a thing called role playing. He says, I'm going to be you and you're going to be me. You got it? I said, okay, I got it. And he reaches out, grabs me by the lapels and just starts flailing me back and forth, throwing me back and forth. And he goes, you got it? Says, okay, I got it. He just wants me. If I have to manhandle him, he wants me to manhandle him. Okay. But I can't stop thinking in my head. I'm like, Hollywood legend brought down by up and coming Vancouver actor. It's like I'm having these nightmares. It's like so we end up doing the scene and I get a little rougher with him. And as the scene progresses, I get a little rougher with him and I start realizing that, he wants me to go for it. And so then we get back to where all the director's chairs are near the set. And we're sitting there and I talked to him about the scene and about him roughing me up and telling me to go for it and everything. And I must have talked to him for 7-8 minutes nonstop. And he turns and goes, I'm sorry, did you say something? I didn't realize he wore hearing aids and in between scenes, he would turn his hearing aid off so that he could be in his own. But it was like, I had no idea. So I'm talking away, telling them everything I love and this thing and that thing. And you're so great. And this and that. I'm sorry. Did you say something? So that's my Leslie. And then I did a commercial probably a year later for Western Lottery, which he was like a spokesman for in the middle of Canada for the prairie provinces. He was like their spokesman. So I ended up doing a commercial with him again. And this time it was funny. The AD says, okay, Mr. Nielsen is coming. We're going to bring him in through the back door. And I want everyone to be respectful. This is Leslie Nielsen. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, okay, whatever. So as soon as the door opens and he walks in, I look up and I go, hey, old man. And he comes over and gives me a big hug. And you could see the look on the AD's face, the assistant director's face when I said that, because he's like, okay, I'm losing my job. This person is not respecting Leslie Nielsen. And then when he came over and gave me a big hug, we realized that, oh, I knew him, he knew me, everything was fine. Yeah. And but he was so good. And the thing about Camouflage is the film, he is not the Leslie Nielsen that everyone was expecting. He's got stubble, and it's a dark film, and he swears throughout the film. And it was a real departure to see Leslie Nielsen playing the type of role that he used to play before he became the big comedy king. And once again, Lachlan Monroe was in that film too. So it's like, I think he's up to like 284 films or something.
Yes, he's just working everything.
And he's a Vancouver actor like you, right? Yeah.
And he's in everything.
Scary movie. Every scary movie. It was so
Hallmark movies, Lifetime,
everything.
all those. He's in all that
so
stuff.
Funny.
Yeah,
it's very funny.
I think he's done a bunch of those Keenan Ivory Wayne films. I think he was in.
He was in. I think he was in White Chick. He's got that, and he's got that crazy. He's like you. He's got a very a very good voice. Like he's got that crazy voice.
And he's your everyday guy. He's your American Pie. He can fit any role, but at the same time, he's like a chameleon. He's like, people go, oh, I didn't know Lachlan was in that. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know Lachlan. It's like you don't necessarily remember him from some of these films, but he's in everything. I think he's in Freddy versus Jason. I mean, he's the top.
He's great.
He literally is in. He's one of those people who's in everything.
Yeah, he just pops up in everything.
Yeah, I think we've been in 5 or 6 films together.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh wow,
cool.
Yeah, that's great. So it's funny how you work in Vancouver and then you get to work with a lot of people it's got to be fun, just like being on set.
Running into the same
then you're like, oh, hey, this is gonna be fun. Look who's here. Like that.
Well, the funniest part is when you're working on a film and it's like you and 3 or 4 LA actors that have come up to work on this film, and then I show up on set and the entire crew knows me and everyone is happy to see me, and you have these 3 LA actors who are like, who? It's like all of a sudden, the king has walked on set. And they're like, who is this guy? It's like the entire crew has been working with me for 20, 30 years. But these actors half the time are just meeting me for the first time. So it's always a fun experience. It's like, hey, you're famous, but I'm Vancouver famous.
There you go.
Vancouver is a awesome place, man.
We got to get into Say It Isn't So. Ivan's like a 7. How was okay? So
there's Heather right there. Yeah,
and you've worked.
Actually, this poster was in my dorm room in undergrad.
Yeah, and
right above my bed. Yeah,
and Chris, you worked with Chris Klein a couple times too. It was such a great era of filmmaking because you could just
the Farrelly Brothers produced it, and Jamie Rogers directed it. Trying to kind of capitalize on this. There's something about Mary's success,
Well, originally, if I remember correctly, the Farrelly Brothers were going to direct Say It Isn't So, and they were going to let James Rogers, who was their first AD on a bunch of other stuff, they were going to let him direct his first film, and it was going to be
Shallow Hal, maybe?
No, Me, Myself, and Irene.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because that was also around the same time. Yeah.
And then when Jim Carrey came on board, all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we'll take that one. We'll direct that one. You can have Say It Isn't So. And that's how he came to direct Say It Isn't So rather than Me, Myself, and Irene. But I remember that when I went in to read for the film, I had read for a couple other parts and I didn't get them. And then I think it was one of those things where every time I'd go in, they liked me, but they didn't know what to do with me. They knew they wanted me in their film, but they didn't know doing what. And later they brought me in and they said, we're thinking of having you play Mr. Campisi. Well, in the original script, it says Mr. Campisi is a small, bespectacled man. And I was nothing but that. Like I said, I was at my heaviest back then. So I was like closing in on 600 pounds. And there was nothing about me that was small, bespectacled, but I think they figured we could have fun with him. And here's a role that we can have fun with him in. And so they hired me. And it wasn't until I got home and I'm going through the script and it's like, Mr. Campese, Mr. Campese, Mr. Campese. It's like, whoa, geez.
We were in that movie a lot.
In that movie a lot. I mean, it's our older brother.
I don't know. We were too young to see it in theaters, but the day it premiered on HBO, we were in 5th grade at the time. My older brother was in 8th grade. And we watched that movie when it premiered, and we were just on the floor the whole freaking time. Like,
you know, when he gets his hand stuck in the cow.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing
pancakes.
Can we have pancakes tomorrow? Yeah.
Pancakes. The funniest part of that pancakes, the scene in the mess, in the lunchroom,
riot.
when I stand up and the big riot starts. That scene continued. There's a famous photo that 20th Century Fox had released, and I think it's on my IMDb page, is a picture of Lynn Shay, and she's riding me. She's up on my shoulders, and she's riding me like a bucking bronco, because the scene that's in the film went much longer, to the point where she came out, she tried to break me up. She jumps on my shoulder. She's hitting me in the head. She's trying to get me to calm down, and I'm swinging her around, and her legs are flapping around and everything. And finally, she falls off of me, and she grabs a cattle prod, and she's cattle prodding me down to the ground. And she's like, 3 or 4 times she hits me as I'm like slowly going down to the. So they cut all that part out. They ended up ending the scene with me just screaming pancakes. But
yeah,
it's amazing that I get so many emails still. People, you just got to mention the word pancakes and they immediately remember Mr. Campese.
Something funny I remember about that, back when IMDb used to have the message boards, which I wish they'd bring back. There's websites that still have them all like archived, and you can even put new ones on there.
Filmboards.com has a lot of them.
I went to yours one time, and it was like this guy just commented just pancakes, and he kept going pancakes, and all the comments, and people commented back. And then I looked at it again, and this guy came back like over 10 years later, like in 2016, and just wrote pancakes again. And it was just like this.
It's like every few years the guy would come back,
he'd show up and just write
on the message board,
on your IMDb page, and just write like pancakes. It was just so funny. And then our older brothers, we used to always yell with each other. It's like pancakes.
And the funniest part is like when Orlando Jones is busting Chris Klein out of the loony bin, like he's in the vent and he's like, and then you pop out after Orlando Jones comes through and he's like, "What's he doing here?" And you're like, "Are you the pancake guy?" And then they're gonna leave your character there, but no, they end up taking your character
with him.
You end up escaping with him,
like living with Orlando Jones.
Oh man, yeah, you were probably our favorite character in that movie.
Well, when we escaped the ATV that he's driving, I remember when we got to shoot that scene. First of all, they brought a stunt double for me, and it was a stunt actor named Gavin Burr, and he shows up because I was as heavy as I was at the time. He basically, it looked like he had about 6 pillows tied around his waist, and he's wearing the pajamas over that. And it was so clear that he wasn't me. He was a guy with a bunch of pillows tied around him. So he ended up basically sitting in his trailer while they strapped me to the back of that ATV. And the problem was, as I'm getting ready to sit on the luggage rack of this ATV, I see a thing that says, "No passengers, one rider only." Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, well, there's Orlando Jones, there's Chris Klein, and then there's 500-pound me, and it says no passengers, one rider only. I'm thinking, okay, well, this can't be safe. So because there was so much weight on that thing, on the first take, Chris Klein turns the thing on and goes to start it, and the ATV's like chugging. It wouldn't even start. So the first thing the stunt coordinator does is, well, we got to take the governor off. So they go in and they strip the thing so that there's nothing stopping it. And now we go to do take 2. And when he hits the gas, because there's so much weight on the back with me sitting on the back, the thing does a wheelie. The thing almost lands on top of me. And I'm thinking, we still got a day's worth of shooting. So when you watch that film, there's the scene where we're flying down the highway, and I'm sitting on the back of the thing, and you can see me. I'm in my own dream world thinking about pancakes as we're driving around. And there's one moment when you watch that film where we hit a bump, and for just a moment, you see me break character, and the look of death, the look of fear comes over my eyes, because I think we're about to go and I'm about to end up in the ditch. So I remember sitting in the theater with my agent in the premiere. And when that happens, I just remember her looking at me and she says, I never want to see this again. I never want to see that look in your eyes again. And it was hilarious. It's like, I thought I was totally in moment. And I didn't realize until I watched the film, there's a moment where you hit the bump and I just looked like I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm working. Go back into character. I'm wearing slippers. The slippers are about this high off the highway as we're flying along 40 miles an hour. It was one of those things where in real life you wouldn't do, but point a camera at me. And all of a sudden, it's amazing how courageous and how brave you are when there's a camera pointed at you.
It's true. They say pain is temporary, film is forever, right?
Yeah. And the other thing I remember about that film, I loved Mark Pellegrino's character. And I remember the whole line about, yeah, why don't you come back here? We'll tie you up to the tree and fuck you up the ass and show you what we do to real perverts around here. And I'm thinking, you sound more like a pervert than the guy you think's a pervert.
So funny, yeah.
And that was back in the day where, like, you know, there wasn't any, like, you know, this political incorrectness just, you know, wasn't even an issue in making comedy films. It was just, it was a crazy
funny?
fun time.
It was all out off the wall, just
especially because the Farrelly Brothers, you know, they're trying to top There's Something About Mary, you know. And you, Sally Field, and Richard Jenkins, did you get to?
Yeah, I met them briefly, like, you know, at Circus when you're back at the trailer and people are coming past you and everything. I wish I had gotten to work with them or get to even talk with them. I remember sitting across from Sally Field in the lunch trailer, and it's just like, you know, I never said a word. It's just like I didn't know what to say. I was like, I'm sitting across from Sally Field. I just kept thinking of, you know, Smoking the Bandit, you know, and it's like, she's sitting right there. So many people were turned off by the fact that she was in this film. And I thought it just showed how willing she is to just have fun. You know, the whole thing about wiping the bread under her arms to make her husband, when he wants his sandwich to be salty, or
She went all out in that movie. Yeah, that's like when I was a kid. Yeah, like I'd seen her in Doubtfire, Smoking the Bandit,
but she played it completely straight.
Tons of other stuff, but I'd never seen her play such a crude, just over the top role, and it was. I enjoyed it. It was crazy. It was
hilarious.
When they talk about when she's talking about her husband, she says, "Yeah, old R2D2 here couldn't keep it in his shorts or whatever." That movie is so filled with one-liners, quotes that you know. She's a vaginitarian, you know. It's like I'm quoting that film all the time. But the one thing I remember is we'd be on set and we're getting ready to roll, and they'd be like, "Where's Chris Klein?" Where I remember being at Riverview Mental Hospital where we were shooting all of the mental hospital stuff, and he'd be off in the corner somewhere making out with Katie Holmes because they were an item when we shot that film. So it was like she was hanging around all the time. So it's like you could tell they were newly in love because every time there was a break
in that movie. I think he was like 20, 21 when they filmed it. I mean, he was just, you know,
after American Pie, he was like
superstar, you know.
He really got a lot of the roles that, you know, like
he was like the dramatic actor.
He became kind of, because the cast of American Pie all went on to do big things, but Chris Klein, they were trying to make like the next
like Tom Cruise,
like Keanu Reeves.
Like
They're trying to make him like the next Keanu Reeves.
And he's one of our favorite actors. So we're glad.
He did like, what was that, Rollerball?
Yeah, Rollerball, John McTiernan. Yeah. The remake.
And where's Chris Klein now?
He's still doing it.
Yeah, like
you know, he does I think he's getting into like working on movies himself, like behind the camera and things like that, and still doing a lot of like, you know.
He hasn't stopped acting. Yeah, we still see him.
There's a lot of genre movies I've noticed.
Yeah, a lot of like, independent stuff, and then he does stuff like The Benchwarmers too, which was pretty good. Yeah.
So he's.
Well, that's the thing. There's so many outlets now for film. You know, in the old days, it was you go to the theater, or there might be something at the video store, or there might be something at the drive-in. And then there were like TV movies, but now everybody in their phone is a filmmaker. And what's happened is, I'm finding this out now, is trying to get films into festivals. It's like before there used to be 300 films submitted. Now there's 30,000 or 3,000, or it's like everybody's making a film. But yeah, Chris Klein on that film, he was another one who just decided to go for it with that film.
Oh man, he was,
because when he's putting the pubic hair on his
Oh god.
Yeah, I remember it was right after it premiered on HBO, and a bunch of my friends who had HBO were talking about it in 5th grade. They're like, "You guys, what about the part where he has the butt hairs on his face?" Yeah, that was a part all the kids.
In the commentary, Chris Klein, just the way he talks about the movie, you could just tell he had so much fun doing it, and everybody involved it seemed
I like
they did.
there's a part in his truck where he drives a Ford, and somebody wrote within the dust, "Sister Ford Icator." yeah. That movie's definitely out there. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing with that film is the studio finally had to come and pull the plug because they had A camera, B camera, they had a splinter unit, they had a second unit, they had another tandem unit, because they kept coming up with jokes. So they kept, oh, you know what would be good? You know what would be funny? You know what would be funny? And before you knew it, you had 4 different units shooting at the same time because they were out shooting different gags and different things. And finally the studio had to come in and say, look, the film's done. It's good. Let's just put it out there. And it's amazing. It's another one of those films that you either love the film or you just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the people who take themselves too seriously who just can't let go and have fun with the film.
People
the guy sticking his hand up a cow's ass and it gets stuck. That's funny. If you don't find that funny, then you're watching the wrong movie.
Oh, and then he's like, wait a minute, where's
the Ringo? And then
and then it cuts to the next scene right there. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't realize, that's what comedy was in the late 90s, early 2000s, like that was what was in,
off the wall, just a culmination of just all that.
Very much a product of its time.
We did a project in grad school. We actually had this poster in the background of one of the scenes.
We were supposed to recreate scenes from movies or TV or whatever. And I did a scene from 500 Days of Summer where they're in a cafe, and I made it the cinema cafe. So we just went home to our family's farm and just got a box full of all of our movie memorabilia, just some of it. And that made the cut. That was on the wall.
That was the big featured thing in the background.
And of course, I got to ask about Heather Graham before we move on.
Heather Graham. How was she?
I'm trying to think if I even ran into her or met with her, because, just like with Dudley Do-Right, it's like you end up, if your scenes are with certain actors, those are usually the only people. And I'm thinking, I don't think I even crossed paths with her. I think I once passed Sarah Silverman. It's amazing the amount of people that were in the film. Like you start listing the people, you forget, oh, that's right, Sarah Silverman was in the movie too. But no, I don't even think, I think the same with Sally Field. I think once I sat across from her in the lunch tent and didn't know what to say, I can't remember, was Boogie Nights before or after Sadism?
It was before. Sadism So was like the height of Heather Graham's.
Yeah. So, I'm just sitting there eating my lunch going, I'm singing across from Roller Girl. I'm singing across from Roller Girl. It's like, there's certain times in this business where, you do get not so much starstruck, but for me, it's almost like character struck. It's like, it's not the person that I'm excited to be sitting across from. It's the characters they've played that I'm excited to be sitting across from. Like with Sally Field, it's just like all I could think about was Smokey and the Bandit. It's like when I did an episode of So Weird, I worked with Henry Winkler. It was the same thing. I wanted to talk to him about Happy Days and all these things, but the entire time I remember sitting across from him in the lunch tent. It was like, I'm sitting across from the Fonz. I can't. It's like there's so many times where you just become numb to the fact that you grew up with these people and now you're working with them on a first name basis.
Now, that episode is so weird.
The troll. I think you were in 2.
You were in 2, but
the one with the troll. Where
we watched that one as kids, and then we found it on the Disney Plus. The other night
we rewatched it.
So we rewatched it.
You're in this crazy amount of troll makeup. They're making you look like you're like 15 feet tall.
And you have that like long nose with like the ball at the end of it. It was just like,
well, the nose is. I've never seen a more penis-looking nose.
I know, right?
The funny thing was, we're in the makeup trailer, and Joelle Chalier from SFX Studios did the makeup. And before we started, it was like just plain latex color. It was just like beige, yellow, whatever, pinkish. And I'm sitting in the trailer and I'm getting painted. And all of a sudden, one of the execs from Disney comes in the room and she goes, "Oh, look at, it's that's very, very, and you could tell her she was trying to come up with the words, but she's like, that nose is very," and then all of a sudden she goes, "I got to go call my husband," and leaves. And I thought that was the most hilarious thing.
I wish I could have heard that phone call.
And a big thing with you is you play a lot of characters that have very heavy prosthetics or makeup.
Yeah, and then
was so weird like the first time or that?
Well, I think I'm trying to think when I did Camouflage, we did a whole prosthetic thing of my arm because Leslie Nielsen stabs me in the hand with a pen. So we did this whole rig where they created a fake arm. And so my arm is here and they stab. And at the same time, I have a prosthetic on my hand that already has the pen in it. So we did it all in one shot. So you see the hand, he stabs the hand, and then I bend out of frame. And as I come back up, I lift my hand that has the prosthetic on it. So that was my first experience with prosthetics. But as far as on my face, when we did that one, that was the makeup wasn't bad, but what was the hair that they gave me, that like I had a big hairy chest and everything. It was basically like a bath mat that they had like dyed brown. So I was just like, if you watch that episode, I'm just soaking wet because I got this bath mat underneath me and I can't breathe on the thing. And the woman that I ended up doing the scene with, if I remember correctly, she played Grandmama in the New Addams Family.
I didn't even realize that was the same one because Ellie, we're huge fans of that show.
Yeah, Ellie Harvey.
Ellie Harvey, we watch that every day after school, The New Addams Family, and you got to work with her on Joe Finds Grace.
Yeah, and Betty Phillips, that's her name. She was the one who played the troll that she turned into me, and yeah, she played Grandmama on The New Addams Family.
Wow.
And I think she even worked on Mr. Rogers. That's back in the 60s.
Yeah, back to Pittsburgh, right? And back to Pittsburgh, I forgot to mention that, but our dad actually grew up right outside of Pittsburgh.
Midland, Pennsylvania.
Midland, Pennsylvania.
Kind of near the Ohio River.
So like that's hearing that your wife's from is really cool.
That's cool because we're
she was living in one of those small little towns outside. But I noticed because after I've been there, you have Pittsburgh, and then it's surrounded by all these little tiny communities and townships, and I think it was Level Green is where where she was living at the time. But going back to makeup on that film was the first time I really dealt with makeup, and they had me on apple boxes to make me look taller. And then every time I would speak, they had people next to me with fans and water bottles to make it look like the spray from my talking was hitting her in the face. But I can say it now, but the worst part of that experience was my hands. I had fake gloves, like these fake troll hands, and then they had these big nails that they had attached to them. And in the one scene where she's holding the eggplant, and basically her brother, and so they've been turned into vegetables, and I'm supposed to lean forward and grab the eggplant. Well, because I have contacts in, because I'm on a riser, and because I have these things, I couldn't really see. So I leaned forward and I grabbed this 14-year-old's breast.
Ow.
The lead girl. And I'm trying to pull the eggplant towards me. Unfortunately, the eggplant's connected to her. So we had to stop, and basically someone had to come over and help basically remove my nails from this girl's breast. And I've never felt worse in my life than that. But that's part of the business.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you watch that performance, first half of the day, I was doing her voice like this. And then the second half of the day, I decided, no, I'm going to do it like this. So when you watch the performance, it goes back and forth from really high to really low because they ended up cutting it back and forth from different ways of doing it, because I didn't audition for that. I had played the guy who gets his arm ripped off in the Halloween episode, Boo, and with Henry Winkler, and they liked working with me on that. So they basically brought me back to do that episode. And so that was really my first experience with prosthetics. I think I did Voyage of the Unicorn, where I played an ogre, but that ogre was more of like a German page boy. I had the blonde page boy haircut and the lederhosen, and I had to do a big fight scene with Beau Bridges. And
I remember that.
And that was intense because here he is, he's in his 60s, and in between takes, they've got me over in the corner with EMTs sucking oxygen because I was at my, like I said, once again, I was at my heaviest back then. And nothing tells you it's time to get in control of your health when the 60-year-old guy is standing there waiting for you, and you're the young guy in the corner with sucking on the oxygen. But that was a lot of fun. That makeup was a big makeup, but the biggest makeup I'd say was Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, because that was like 6.5 hours of prosthetic makeup every day.
It takes a certain type of actor to sit in the chair and get makeup. You know, a lot of people, they get offered a role and they don't take it because it requires so much. And I think
requires so much, time sitting in the makeup chair, showing up at 3 a.m.
And that's how Eric Stoltz got his career. He just would sit in the chair, the fly.
Well, that's how he got the fly too, because he mask.
And it takes a certain.
It helps people get roles, but it also keeps people from getting.
And Willem Dafoe is one of the big actors. Amazing actor that is known for sitting down and just not care, so what is that like as an actor approaching that? Because like I said, it takes a certain type of actor.
Well, two things. One, a lot of actors can't do the prosthetic because you have to be able to act through the makeup. And so everything has to be big, and if you're a natural actor or everything you do is very, very subtle, it's not going to read through the makeup. It's going to look like you're not doing anything. So, if you're scared, you can't just go be scared. You got to be, everything has to be embellished. Everything has to be made bigger. And getting the makeup on, I find the good thing is I like to talk. I like to be the entertainer. And my goal is, if I'm getting makeup done, I feel like it's my job to keep them awake. And it's like, if I can be here at 2 a.m. to put this makeup on, and they can be here at 2 a.m. to put it on, it seems to me to be a disservice to them to say, I'm just going to go to sleep while you guys do my makeup. That doesn't seem right to me. That, if they have to be up here to do the makeup, then the least I can do is talk and keep them awake while they're doing their, but there's something about on Scooby-Doo was 6.5 hours of makeup and then an hour and a half of getting into the wardrobe. So by the time I went to set every day, I was in the overtime because I'd already put in my 8-hour day sitting in the makeup chair. And the great thing was, Scooby-Doo.
Look familiar?
You
need to apologize to him. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I've worked with him twice, 2 different Scoobies.
Both of them were Brian.
Yeah.
No, you worked.
No, Brian Levant directed the second.
Yeah, he
directed the prequel. Yeah.
It was Raja Gosnell.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
And written by James Gunn was the first one.
Oh yeah.
And then the second one was when they decided to bring them back to high school to show how the Mystery Inc. came together.
Yep.
And that was fun for me because I'm the only person who's in Scooby-Doo 2 that's also in Scooby-Doo 3.
You have your own trading card in Scooby-Doo 2.
I got my own trading card.
Yeah,
that was great. You want to talk about, you don't realize how big a number like 1,000 is until someone says you have to sign 1,000 trading cards. I sat in my agent's office in the boardroom for like 3 hours with the entire table covered in cards and had to sign them and sign them and sign them. And it's funny because my signature is CEH. Well, my wife's name is Leah, Lea. Well, after a few hundred, it looked like I was starting to sign Leah. And you can tell when I was getting bored with it because all of a sudden the little CEH is now a big CEH. And it's funny, you go on eBay and you look at all the different cards, and some of them I've signed up in the left corner, some I've signed up on the right corner, some I take up the whole space, and there's other ones that don't even look like my name. And the weird thing is now going on eBay and seeing things like movie posters and Scooby-Doo related things with my signature on them that I know that I didn't sign. So that somebody saw the trading card and just copied the signature from there, because when you look at it, you can tell it's sort of the same, but you can tell that they came at it differently. So they didn't actually, it's not me that signed it, but trying to get eBay to pull stuff like that is just such a nightmare. It's like, whatever, if you're stupid enough to pay for it, then go for it. But yeah, I've loved working on the Scooby. And it's funny because I've gotten to do all the different Air Bud talking dog movies. I've done 3 of those. I've gotten to work with Kermit the Frog. I've gotten to work with.
We had
all my co-stars.
But you were in the
Muppets of Oz.
Muppets Wizard of Oz,
Which
yeah.
had Tarantino, Queen Latifah in it, like in little cameo roles too.
And you actually got to have a scene with Kermit the Frog.
That was because the scene was Kermit is supposed to be waiting for Ashanti to show up, and while he's waiting for her to show up, he's having a piece of pie. And I said to director Kirk Thatcher, I said, when we were getting ready to shoot that, I said, because I was already established as Earl, one of the patrons of the restaurant, one of Queen Latifah's favorite customers. So I'm in a bunch of scenes in the restaurant as it is. And so I said, wouldn't it be funny if Earl is sitting at the table basically entertaining Kermit while they're waiting for Ashanti to show up, and then when he gets up to go meet Ashanti, wouldn't it be funny if I then just like lean forward and took Kermit's piece of pie? Because who would steal from Kermit? Well, I would.
That was your idea?
Yeah, and he thought it was so funny that they decided to add that. And it was so bizarre because growing up, especially if you're a fan of the Muppets, the Muppet Show, and whatever, these people and they exist within this frame on your TV set. And as far as you're concerned, their world ends at the bottom of the TV frame, right? And so now to be in a room and to see there's Kermit, but then there's a guy's hand, and then there's a guy laying on a creeper that they have in the in the body shops, on the thing that slides around on the floor that you're laying on your back. He's now Steve Whitmire is laying on one of those. He's got a monitor in front of him. He's got a mic on. So he's watching the performance of what's happening up there. He's got a mic on because he's also doing the voice and he's doing the puppetry while he's sliding around on the floor. And because he's sitting on the chair, at one point, Kermit gets up. They do these things so well that you don't even make note of these things. When you're watching Kermit, when he goes to get up, he pushes himself away from the table, pushes his chair back. Well, he's a puppet. A puppet can't push a chair back. So you have Dave Goelz, who is the guy who originated Gonzo. Dave Goelz is on the floor, and his job is to operate the chair. So when you see in the scene, when Kermit goes to get up, Kermit pushes away, but really it's Dave Goelz on the floor pushing the chair away, while Steve Whitmire, who's operating as Kermit, is pushing it's like, to watch these guys, it's like magic watching all this happen. And the entire time you're like, there's stuff going on down here. It's like Kermit's supposed to end right here. And all of a sudden and the funniest part is in between takes, they continue in character. So he's like, talking to me, he's talking me up and he's asking me questions and he's talking about what'd you do last night? Yeah, as my character. And it's like at some point you have to shake your head because you realize I'm talking to a puppet. We're not even on camera. I'm just hanging out waiting for them to do the next take. But Steve, as Kermit, is laying down there talking to me, and I'm sitting here, grown man, talking to a hand puppet. Because you've grown up with these people, they're real. It's the same with Scooby. When we were on set, they had Scooby, they had a full-size model of what he would look like if he was real. And they would place that model, they'd place it on set so they could get all the lighting cues. And like they take a picture of what the real Scooby would look like on set. And then they would pull him out. Then when they would bring in this big ball that has, it's like flat gray on one side and like a mirror on the other side, and they put that where Scooby is, and that way they can take a test of how the lighting would affect him. So when they're doing the visual effects, they've already gotten a sample of what the lighting was like on that set, and then they'd pull that out, and now they'd put a tennis ball there. And so as the actor, they go, okay, here's where Scooby is, and then the tennis ball is going to go over here, and then he's over here. And then, like, for example, the scene in Scooby-Doo 2 where he's surfing on the fire extinguisher and he's surfing on the tar monster, and he's he's hardening up so he can surf. Well, to do that, all of a sudden they have the little light pointer, like the little red light with the cats that you have, the little pointer. And they're like, okay, now Scooby is surfing up here, and then he flews down here. And so now as an actor, you're sitting there watching this red light, but you have to stay in character because you're actually watching Scooby. And what you don't realize is when you watch the film, something that happens in a blink of an eye could have taken an hour to shoot, because you have so many elements with the visual effects and so many things where you're just, and me in my costume sitting around all day. And it was fun because I got to bring my wife to set as my assistant. So for one job was basically, I couldn't fit in a director's chair. So they had to build like a wall of 6 apple boxes for me to sit on. So everywhere I went, I had like this team of people carrying all these apple boxes. But that outfit on Scooby-Doo, I had on, first of all, I had on a cooling suit like the soldiers in Kuwait wore underneath their outfits. And it was like, it would pump like ice water.
Mhm.
And so there was like a fridge unit that would plug into me that would keep the water cold, and that would run through. Then over top of that, I had a fat suit because of course I lose 200 pounds, and the first gig I get hired on, they got to build me a fat suit because that's the way life goes, I guess. But I could take it off every night. I didn't have to take it home with me. So that was a good thing about losing the weight. But so I had this fat suit built on top of the cooling suit. Then I had fiber optic lights in my pants. Then I had a smoke machine inside the pants. Then I had on the hat. Well, I had the 6-piece prosthetic. I had the wig. Then I had the hat, which had a working lantern inside it. And then I had the smoke machine. I had the fiber optic lights. Then I had, over top of the fat suit, I had the first layer of the outfit. Then I had the shirt. Then I had the jacket. Then I had to wear the big gloves over top of that. My wife would comment that once I was fully into my minor 49er do, the only part of Ernst that existed was a pinhole in the center of my contacts. Everything else was minor 49er. So when we'd be sitting on set, she'd be staring into those holes in my contacts like, I just want to see who I'm married to. He's in there somewhere. I'm staring at him.
Okay.
But it was it's the funny thing is when you're playing that kind of character, people forget that there's an actor in there. They just, you just become minor 49er to everybody on set. So it was fun. You'll have like Freddie Prinze Jr. walk up to you and just start playing with your bladder belly and boing, 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 and feeling the hair on your stomach. And the whole time you're thinking, hello, actor, I'm in here. I'm a human being. I'm not a toy. You're playing with me. You could actually talk to me. But it's funny, you just forget that those are actors. That's just minor 49er. He's just a character.
Yeah.
But it was
You had some
And I bet that was surreal being a 70s and 80s kid, like growing up and getting to work with Kermit and Scooby.
and then not even that minor 49er was just like in Scooby-Doo folklore. He's like one of the #1 villains of like all time.
yeah, I think he was in the first 1 or 2 episodes. He was like,
So he's like definitive, and that had to have been like, I mean, being a 70s.
well, it was weird too, is because they hired like 12 or 13 actors to play all the different monsters. And we went through all these makeup tests and camera tests. And so you had different actors. John DeSantis was hired to play Chickenstein, and you had Paul Becker was played to play Ghost Clown. So you had all the monsters that you see in the museum. At one point, they were all going to come alive. So you had all these actors that were hired to play, and we all went through the makeup process and everything. And one by one, they started weeding them out and deciding, a lot of them decided to go CGI. A lot of the characters like the tar monster and the cotton candy globe and all this, they ended up becoming visual effects. And then what happened is they had like Redbeard's ghost. So you still have the Redbeard ghost's ship in the film because that was in the original script, but the guy who owns the ship now is not in the film. Now you have the evil masked figure for some reason riding into town on his ship, but it's not his ship. So it's like, and he breathes fire. So as soon as they got rid of him, they gave me the gag of breathing fire. So now minor 49er breathes fire for some reason, even though he never breathed fire in the series. And it was cool because they kept taking other characters away, and then they just kept giving me their gags, and my part just kept getting bigger. So I'm not gonna, but
you got to
for my first day of makeup tests to my last day of second unit shooting was 7 months. So
Wow.
I didn't work steady for 7 months, but I was involved with Scooby-Doo for 7 months. So now my wife, whenever she meets anybody, she goes, have I shown you my Scooby-Doo ring? her wedding ring. She calls it her Scooby-Doo ring because that's what paid for the wedding ring.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That's awesome, man. Crazy getting to hear all the technical sides. And Kermit, man, I'm really upset they replaced Steve Whitmore. You know, he's been Kermit since Jim.
Well, he was basically who Jim wanted. He was Jim's replacement. He basically wanted him to play him.
The new Kermit doesn't even sound
terrible.
like Kermit, man.
It's like some frat boy got drunk and just said, "Hey, I do the best Kermit voice. Let's
Yeah.
go." And then
Disney did it as a message just because Steve Whitmore went in there trying to like make some creative, like say, hey, Kermit should do
make
this
some
or that.
demands,
And
then,
to make a statement, they just fired him, you know, and
Yeah.
like it's just really not fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen lots of articles about the whys and the whats behind all that. I just know that to me he was the sound of Kermit, because Jim stopped playing him so long ago. We forget that, you know, Steve Whitmire took over from when he died, and he's been Kermit this whole time. Now I find that the Muppets all sound like it's the same guy doing all the characters,
and then
and they don't. None of them sound exactly like what we know them to sound like.
We know Frank Oz left Miss Piggy just because he was tired of it all. Like, so Disney, if you're watching, bring Steve Whitmore, Frank Oz back.
The same thing happened with Space Jam. I think like one person speaks like every Warner Brothers character now. And it's just like it's kind of it's just a shame, you know. You're a very successful voiceover actor yourself. I know with the Asterix movies, you play you do the American dub. And
well, with the last film, I was the English voice of Obelix for the entire world. That basically aired everywhere in the world. For the first film, I was the ADR voice, as far as if you pick the movie and you pick the English, you know, you switch over to listen to the English dub, you get me. And in some countries, the film was released theatrically with my voice, but then when the first film was released in England, they hired a full famous names, British actors to do the film. They did a big release there. I think Nick Frost did my character, and I think Matt Berry, and like all the famous British comedians. But then with the second film, they decided to just go back to the original English sound. So I got an upfront credit playing Obelix, and it's such a, you know, these are, I mean, they're made by a company in Belgium, and they're basically like Pixar quality films. They're big
really
3D
popular
films.
Yeah.
But it's a franchise that not many people in North America know about. I mean, Asterix and Obelix is one of the biggest comics worldwide for like 55 years now. And, you know, I had known about it because my mom is French Canadian. So there's the whole French, because it's a French comic. And so I knew about that growing up because I had seen it in my family. But to get that as my first voiceover gig was to get this big $80 million, you know, feature, and then to get brought back for another one. And I keep submitting tapes, I keep submitting auditions for voice work, and yet these are still the only two. But, you know, if that's the only two voice work I ever do is to, you know, a lead in these two films, I'll take it. But I keep pushing forward. I got my fancy new mic that I'm using today. So, you know.
I like it. Sounds great.
Like,
you have one of those voices that really, oh, nice. Oh, wow.
Fancy. Nice. I got to get one of those.
Yeah. And so back to 13 Ghosts.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
We always wonder, you always play like giant babies for some
we
reason.
noticed on your IMDb, like a lot of them are big baby, giant baby, like
and Trick or Treat, you're the guy in the baby costume. They're trying to.
Yeah, I think the Trick or Treat, see, they're both Warner Brother films, and you know, I like to think that the second one was almost like an homage to my character. It was almost like a cameo of the great child, you know. Except now I'm Anna Paquin's blind date. And it's the whole sight gag when, you know, when she says
by the tree, like or something.
Such a good.
Yeah, was the big sight gag is she says to her sister about her blind date, is he young? And then they cut to me dressed as a baby doing the thumbs up. But I always look at it as a, you know, it's like for the people in the know, it's like an Easter egg. It's like big baby. Why is that big baby? The funny thing is though, I'm like 200 pounds lighter. So I look like the great child's child. I'm like, I look so much younger and so much healthier now. But yeah, the great child, that was funny. When I first auditioned for that, I think the character's name was like Couch Potato. And it was like a big guy who had died on his couch and had like rats coming in and out of his body. And there's like all these different concepts, because I think they did like, I must have a stack of 13 Ghost scripts somewhere. And each one is written by, so I think, James Gunn did a pass there's like about 10 or 12 versions of the film that I have scripts for, and I'd like to sometimes go back and read the original version, because then at another point, my mother was supposed to be like a sex slave, and she's like strapped onto me, and it's like a dominatrix kind of. They had all these different versions of the different ghosts and what they were going to be. Like when you watch the movie and you listen to the commentary, they're giving you one version of my story, and then when you watch the special features and they have the ghost files, they're giving you another version. So it's like, even when they're releasing the film, they still haven't figured out what the backstories of these people are. But I wish that they had put like that ghost files where F. Murray Abraham tells the backstories of all the different ghosts. I wish they had put more of that into the film, so we could get to see more backstory of these ghosts. And I keep reading people saying Netflix should do a series where
there was like
episode.
Yeah, a big meme going. You're big in meme culture though, because I mean, there was a big Minor 49er meme that came out with Shaggy during the Shaggy meme era, and then after that, so there's some memes that pop up that you're in, and it's great to see. And like I said, The Great Child was like our favorite ghost in 13 Ghosts. Another one we caught on HBO, like the second it went there, and
watched it with our dad. Yeah,
it's one of those things where like when your character came up, we're like, wait a minute, we want to like pause it and just like take all this in, like all the. I remember reading somewhere someone said they can't think of Ernst Harth without like imagining like that puke all over his chest from that movie.
Well, the funny thing is, like the scene when he first encounters us, and we're still in our little cubicle in the basement, and my mom is sitting on my lap, and she's feeding me. She has a baby food jar, and she's feeding me. But what you can't see is that baby food jar is filled with the same puke that's on my bib. So she's basically just feeding me the puke back. And so people don't know that. And then secondly, my only direction that was given from Steve Beck, the director, was like, for example, when the first time I appear free from my cubicle and you see us at the end of the hall and we come around the corner, and I'm standing there with my mom and I'm swinging my axe. The direction I was given was scream bloody murder, but don't open your mouth. So when you see me, all you see is because I'm screaming, but I'm not opening my mouth. So that was, and it's that level that it's so subtle. It's almost subliminal. It's like you hear it, but you don't see it. And I think that's one level of creepiness that's added to the character. Is this, you hear this moaning underneath.
So fun. Yeah. Oh man, that's like,
yeah, that's a classic, man. Like, especially, everybody, like, we know we're talking about horror movies, like they're always talking about that one. That one gets talked more about than the original. Yeah.
And Tony Shalhoub. I mean, we just we're at a film festival this week. One of our short films is playing in Franklin, Tennessee, and we were talking with
this guy's an entertainment lawyer. His name's Corky Kessler, and he's like best friends with Tony Shalhoub. Really good friends.
Really good friends.
So we were just talking to that guy about Tony Shalhoub the other night. Yeah.
And then we even mentioned, we're like, we're actually about to interview a
guy who worked with him in 13 Ghosts.
Really successful actor who worked with Tony Shalhoub. So
I think that's one of the only films where the three leads of the film are Arabs.
Yes.
Murray Abraham,
Shannon Elizabeth,
Nadia from American Pie, 100 other things. Yeah.
Tony Shalhoub. But yeah, Matthew, getting to work with Matthew on that, and then working with him as Minor 49er, it was so interesting for him, because I remember he did an interview, I think it was maybe in Fangoria, and he had said that the Big Child, I couldn't eat in the same tent as the Big Child because he would make me sick. So they basically had to put all the ghosts. We had our own. Oh, your poster just.
We're good.
Out there this morning for the interview with that stuff that teachers used to stick stuff that.
Oh like, yeah.
Putty, yeah.
But yeah, he said that they ended up having to put all the ghosts in a separate lunch tent because we're all in our makeup all day, and people just could not sit and eat their lunch with me and just puke running down my face.
What did they use for the puke?
It was like a green latex. It was like chunks of like yellow plastic, like chunks of rubber mixed in a green latex, and then once they placed it, it basically just stayed there.
Yeah.
And whereas in Trick or Treat, when my character has become drunk and has puked up himself, the puke that they put on me was powdered leek soup, chunks of hot dog, beer. It's like they actually made puke, poured this stuff down me. Now I've got this stuff and I'm smelling this stuff. And now remember this, 3 months later, they brought us back for reshoots and they put the same bib and everything back on me. It'd never been cleaned. So for 3 months, it'd been sitting in a closet somewhere with hot dogs, leek soup, and all this crap on me because they brought it back to the scene where my neck gets ripped out. Well, originally, I didn't get killed by the werewolves, and then they brought us back to do reshoots where you see my neck get. But that was a fun film. But going back to 13 Ghosts, when we were doing the makeup tests and we're trying to figure out a look, at this point I had curly hair like I have now, and we're standing there trying to think of a look, and I'm standing there talking with Steve Beck, and Shannon Elizabeth comes walking by. She leaves her trailer and she comes walking by and he goes, Shannon, Steve says, I want to ask you a question. I'm doing like a little survey here. He says, what do you think? What kind of hair should we have for the great child? And she looks at me and she thinks, oh, what was that comic? There was a cartoon in the 60s. It was like a big duck. What was his name? And Steve goes, Baby Huey? And she goes, yeah. And that's where the look for the big blonde tuft in the front came from, was from Shannon Elizabeth saying I should look like Baby Huey. The next thing you know, I'm going off to the makeup trailer, getting all my head shaved except for the tuft in the front. And then they dyed that blonde. And then I had to go back in every 3 days to get my roots touched up because my dark hair was starting to show. And the weird thing of that is, cut to a year later, and we get called in to do reshoots. We have to come in to do reshoots for a day. Well, I wasn't going to shave my head. Basically, what I ended up doing was I ended up shaving my head completely bald. And then they had a blonde fake tuft that they stuck on. So somewhere on the internet, you can find somebody has framed a picture, a framed picture. And in the picture is a pair of my underwear, a rattle, and this blonde tuft. And he's all excited about having the great child's blonde hair. And I felt like saying, well, that's just from one day's work from the reshoots. That was my own hair in the real film. But here's the creepy part. We shot, I'm getting ready to go to the studio to do the reshoots for 13 Ghosts. And basically they wanted to reshoot the scene when at the end of the film, when you see us all walking off into the woods, like we've all been released and we're walking off into the woods, all the ghosts have been released. That wasn't in the original. So we ended up going to reshoot that as one thing. But when I got up that morning, I knew that Big Brother, I was a fan of Big Brother, and I wanted to watch Big Brother, but I was going to be on set. So I went and I got up in the morning, turned my TV on so I could reset, so I could set the VCR to tape Big Brother. And the first thing I noticed is I see a plane fly into a building. And I'm like, what the hell is that all about? What the hell's going on? And that's when I realized that, well, something was going on in the world. And now in retrospect, I look back and I think, well, I was more perturbed that they were going to be postponing Big Brother and that I wasn't going to get to watch Big Brother. So I go off the set upset about the fact I don't even really know what's happening with the Trade Center in New York or anything. I just know that, damn it, I'm not getting to watch Big Brother tonight. They're postponing it, whatever. So I get to set, and that's when I find out, because now all of the crew has come up for the day from the States. So they're all Americans. So, you know, the country's going to hell. We don't know what the hell, you know, the world's coming to an end. It's the end of the world. Nobody knows what's happening. So when you're watching 13 Ghosts now, there are, for me, especially when I watch the film, there are certain scenes where I know when we were shooting that, they'd yell cut and everybody would come and we'd all huddle around this TV set. And we'd be watching what's going on. And then that was, so yeah, we shot the reshoots to 13 Ghosts on 9/11. And that for me, that will forever be a memory, because all these crew members they didn't know if they were going to get to go back home. You know, they're all of a sudden they're talking about renting cars and driving back to LA because nobody knows what's going on. But, you know, that just shows you that it's so surreal to watch what happened on 9/11 on a video and then take your underwear and your tuft of hair and go back to set and pretend to be a scary ghost and then cut and I come back and watch what's going on. It's like puts everything into perspective.
I'll bet, man.
But yeah, that's definitely my biggest memory of 13 Ghosts was the fact that we did reshoots on 9/11.
Yeah, that's
And then the film opened up that October. So I think that may have affected the release of the film too, because many people weren't even in the mood to go to the movie theater yet.
Go off,
It wasn't really till
bounce back.
November when the box office started picking up that year. I remember, yeah.
Yeah. And let's see. Before we get to like some of the new stuff we work on, we want to talk a couple more of your past projects. So let's.
Dreamcatcher. How about that?
Dreamcatcher. You have the first line.
You have the first line in that huge like Stephen King, Lawrence Kasdan, big budget movie.
Yeah, the first person you see and hear is me, and that was a weird experience. Leading up to that, I did the audition, and I got the call back, which meant that Lawrence Kasdan was going to be coming up to the studio, and I was going to go in and read for him. And it turns out it was between me and another guy. I didn't know who the other guy was, but I found out quickly because as I'm sitting in the studio and I had basically scraped together change to take the bus to the studio, it's like, starving actor, just happy to be here. And all of a sudden there's this commotion at the door. And it turns out this Teamster has picked up this actor at the airport. He's from Toronto. He's flown in. He's the guy that I'm reading against. And he's getting their luggage and they're dropping on. Then we're going to come here. We're going to do your thing. And we're going to take you to the hotel. And then they're adding up his per diem and everything. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, what am I even doing here? It's clear they want this guy. Look at the way they're treating this guy. He's the Mr. Movie Star. And I'm just glad I was able to cash in some bottles to take the bus here. And so I'm already feeling down on myself and everything. And then this casting director comes out and says, okay, you ready? So I think I'm going to read for Lawrence Kasdan, the director, Mr. Academy Award winning guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Mr. Lawrence Kasdan. And I get in the room already feeling down on myself. And he goes, Ernst, I'd like you to meet Larry. Larry, this is Ernst. And immediately I go, man, I thought I was going to get to meet Lawrence Kasdan. And now they got some nobody named Larry here. Okay, whatever. So I do the audition. I'm totally distracted by everything, thinking that, just some nobody named Larry was his assistant. And so I basically walked through the audition, wasn't very good. I ended up leaving. I'm about halfway across the studio parking lot and I'm walking and I'm thinking, Lawrence, Larry. Oh my God, am I stupid? Never even occurred to me that Lawrence and Larry were the same person. So I had this awful audition for Larry Kasdan when I was expecting Lawrence Kasdan. I was like, oh my God, I never felt so stupid in my life, but what are you going to do? So I go home and the next day my agent gets a call from the casting director of some feedback. And she says, at this point, we're going to pass. Unfortunately, Lawrence can only go off what he saw in the room. And let me just say that Ernst was Circus Ernst. And I say that because he was juggling eyeballs and appendages. Basically, I was so out of it. I was just like, so over the top and I'm waving my hands around and everything. And so a week goes by, I get a call from the casting director who says they still haven't found anybody. And I still think that Ernst is the guy for this role. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have Ernst come into my office and we're going to workshop this scene. And he basically could tell that I couldn't find stillness on my own. And my character is supposed to be lying on this shrink's couch. And, I'm supposed to be still. And so what he did was the casting director brought me in. He said, okay, now for the first third of this dialogue, he put a little sticky note on the wall. He says, I just want you to lay there, look at that sticky note and say those lines. And then for this third of the dialogue, and he put another sticky note over here, and then he put another sticky note over here. And he says, I want you to look there, say the first third, look there, say the second third, look there, say the third third, and don't ever move anything else. And we did that. He sent it off. The next day I get a call saying you're back in the running. And the next day I find out I'm booked and I got the role. And I was just so thankful that, I got that second chance. And then it turned out that there was a special tax incentive that was available at the time for shooting in Vancouver. If you came up here, you could get special tax credits, but it was ending at the end of the year. And it would only continue into the new year if it was a show that was established in this current year. So because they were planning on shooting next year. What they did was they brought me in, and that whole opening of the film, we ended up shooting that in December before Christmas to get the show established as a project started that year. And then they went off on holidays and everything. And when they came back, they went up to Prince George up in northern BC to shoot the majority of the rest of the film. So for me, Dreamcatcher was like working on a short film for 3 days, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, because there was no Dreamcatcher. They were still casting the film, but that opening scene, they needed to get established so they could get the tax credits for the rest of the film. So for 3 days, I just basically worked on a short film directed by Lawrence Kasdan. And it was amazing because it was just me and Thomas Jane and the three of us in this room working on this scene. And I remember at one point Lawrence could tell that I was, when you're in the business as a local actor, you never want to be the one who causes the trouble. You never want to be the one who doesn't know his lines. You always want to be the person who's there to serve the project. And so you're aware that, you're not the big LA actor. You're just the guy who's basically lucky to be here. So when you do TV, for example, it's all about not eating up the day. You want to get as much done in the day as possible. So what you end up doing is when they yell action, you learn to go right into your scene. They go, and action, you start talking. And he could tell that I was doing this. And he comes over, he leans next to me and he says, "It's not about feet per second. It's about performance." He says, "When I yell action, I'm just telling the camera operator to press the button, start rolling. I'm telling the sound to start rolling. Doesn't mean you need to start. You go when you're ready to go. It's all about the performance. It's not about feet per second." And it was just like, wow, no one ever spoke to me that clearly. And just like he could tell what I was doing, which was I was racing right into it before I was being grounded and finding myself. And by telling me that, go when you're ready, it was just, because that shot, that whole opening scene, I've got this big camera rig that starts down at the bottom of starts down and then slowly the camera comes up my legs, comes up my body, comes up my stomach, and then the thing stops right in front of my face. Well, it's hard not to be aware of this whole camera rig riding up your body. And so you just start talking and the thing starts, and he could tell that I wasn't in the moment yet. And just having someone tell you, I'll never forget that. It's not about frames per second. It's about performance. And it just allowed me to put all the technical stuff out of the way and just concentrate on Barry Neiman talking about his favorite hamburger. Mm-hmm. And it was so nice. And then when to see the film and to see that, you're basically what starts the entire film.
Setting the tone and everything, like the mood and all that.
Mm-hmm. They cut out some stuff that I felt would have made that scene better. For example, they made a big deal about the couch crashing down when I go to stand up and the couch breaks and crashes down. There was a line after I run out where Thomas Jane looks at the couch all broken and he says to himself, "Well, that's got to be a sign for something." And then he goes and gets the gun to shoot himself. But by taking out that line of the couch meaning, that must mean something. Yeah. Now it's just a big fat guy got up and the couch broke. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't represent anything to Thomas Jane. And that was basically what initiated him to go and kill himself. Now it just sort of comes out of nowhere. I leave the room and he just pulls out a gun and he's going to kill himself. They took out his motivation for that. Yeah. But the cool thing was that couch was spring loaded. It was such a special effect that at the end of each take, they'd press a button and the couch would just go back to one piece. And then I'd run out and the thing would crash. And then I'd come back and there's the couch again. So that was cool. Unfortunately, it didn't. That's the one thing you always have to remember is the film ain't about you when you're a character actor. You shoot all these scenes and you shoot all these different takes and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a great scene. And then you see it. And it's like half the camera work is on the other actor and you just hear your lines off camera. That's the thing about not being the star of the film. You always have to remember film's about them. You might be talking, but the camera might want to see how they're listening to you rather than what you're saying. So you have to allow for that. Your ego can't take over when you see a film.
It's great that you got to be a part of that. I mean, I think up until It Chapter 2, that was like the highest budgeted Stephen King movie they ever did.
And once again, I think that film would have done better if they had left the original ending instead of adding this big alien fight that they reshot. Because the original ending is they all congregate around the character's tombstone, and they all start singing a cappella Blue Bayou, which ties into the whole film, rather than this big alien fight at the end of the movie that the studio made them redo because, I guess the other ending was too cerebral. People have to think.
So you gotta make it like a more popcorn thing for just, which is always the wrong route to go.
It was like that movie cost the studio a lot of money, and like
William Goldman wrote the script, and he's like an Academy Award winning screenwriter. Lawrence Kasdan, Stephen King, and the big names. And then we went to Morgan Freeman and Thomas Jane, and you just start seeing all the cast they put together. But when we shot my scene, they still hadn't cast Duddits, for example. So I remember looking at all the photos that they had laid out on this table, and I saw the photo of Donnie Wahlberg, and I thought, how the hell did he get in this list? Never thinking that that's the guy they were going to end up hiring. But he's actually a much better actor than his past allows you to think he would be. Oh, he's just a boy bander. But when you see him in Sixth Sense, it's not till the movie's over and you see his name in the credits, you go, what? That was Donnie Wahlberg?
I found that out. It blew my mind. And I think
that probably helped him get the role because, he had to probably lose a lot of weight, because Duddits is sick in the movie. Yeah,
he was really good as
He
Duddits.
really did a lot. He really went far with the Duddits role.
We were just saying the other day, he clearly has more range than his brother, and his brother's this just, but his brother's the one that does all the big blockbuster movies and things like that. But going back to that sort of thing, we want to get into Capote because you played Lowell Lee Andrews, which is a very famous teen murderer who murdered his family when he was a spree killer, I think what you would call it.
We killed his family.
He killed his entire family because he thought he had this dream that he wanted to be a gangster, and he wanted to go to Chicago, and he was like Al Capone. He wanted to be this gangster, and he thought, if I killed my family, I could get the insurance money from killing them, and then I could go to Chicago and I can be this gangster. It's like, he's like a 20-year-old guy. So it's like, who the hell knows what he's thinking? He's like in his own little dreamland. But he killed his family. And then he went and ran some errands with something to do with a typewriter or something. And then he came home. So he was like setting up an alibi that he had been out looking at stuff. And then he came home, shot his family, and then sat on the porch with his dog and waited for the police to show up with him sitting there. So then when I got hired on Capote to play this guy, first thing I did was I read the biography that the movie was based on. And in that's where I learned about Lowell Lee Andrews, and also reading on the internet, doing some research, finding out first off that he was a real guy, and then secondly that he had killed his family. But the main reason for him being in that story was that he was the oh shit moment. They knew that he was to be hanged before the two guys, Perry and Dick. So they knew that everything was fine. Their life was fine. But the moment that he was walking to the corner to get hanged, that's when they realized, oh shit, this is real. This is happening now, because
in that movie,
nothing's going to happen to us until he dies. And if he's on his way to the corner, the oh shit moment happens. And so when I was doing research on him, I found that he had a thing that he called his icebox, which was he had a little diary. And in this diary, he would draw pictures. Lowell Lee Andrews would draw pictures of his favorite foods, and he would draw pictures of his favorite recipes. And basically it was like a food diary that he kept. And when he would be sitting in his cell by himself, it was basically like his little blue blanket. It was like his way of his little comfort was to open his icebox and look at all the little pictures of food, his favorite cake, his favorite this, his favorite that. So when I read that, I thought that was a nice little interest. So I stopped and I got myself a diary. And when I was on the plane flying to Winnipeg, where the movie was shot in Winnipeg, Manitoba, I basically created my own icebox. I created this diary. I drew all different pictures of food and steak and pork chops and everything. And then when I got there, I told the director, Bennett, about this and what I had learned about his. So when you see me in the movie, when you see me in my jail cell and I have this yellow book in my hand, that's the actual food diary, the actual icebox that I created. So it was always nice when you can add something that wasn't in the script, something that's personal to the character, and for them to allow me to do that. And then I got the different actors to sign my diary book. The only person I didn't end up bothering to sign it, and I feel bad about it now, was Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, yeah.
But here's a funny anecdote. I know Philip Seymour Hoffman like anybody else does from all the roles he's played. That's all I know about. And usually he's this big, fat, schlumpy, overweight guy. And it never could occur to me, how could this guy with this deep voice play Capote? I never saw it. So the very first time I saw him as Capote was on set, and we were doing the blocking for the very first time where he comes to death row. So the door opens and he walks in and walks past my cell, walks past the cells of the other two guys. And that's the very first time I'm seeing him as Capote. So we do the blocking, door opens, Philip Seymour Hoffman as Capote walks in, and I'm just like, oh my God, look at him. He's so skinny. He's so small. What the hell did they do? Oh my God, and I'm watching it as he goes by. And then all of a sudden they go cut, and Philip Seymour Hoffman comes over, and I can't do Truman's voice, but he comes over and he says, now, when we shoot the scene, you're not just going to stand there with your mouth open, are you? I had no idea that I was just,
You were taken away by.
You were just blown away by it.
Wow.
and the fact that he noticed that and said, you're not going to do that when we shoot. And I was like, no. And so then we decided to we do this. Now we're going to do the scene. And I've come with all my dialogue memorized, and they go, okay, we're just going to improv. We're just going to go with it. They're going to come to you and you're going to say some stuff and you're going to say some stuff. And all of a sudden I start panicking, and I'm like, oh my God. Because I've learned my lines. I'm ready to do my lines. I'm not an improver. Okay, they want me to so I have no idea what the tone of the movie is. I have no idea what the movie's going to look like. And as slow as the movie is now, when you finally see the movie. So they come to my jail cell, and I'm like, what's going on? And all this frenetic energy, and I'm all frantic. I'm reading this book, and don't lose the book. And I'm like just going off a mile a minute. And they cut and get to the end of the scene, and I can see Bennett and Philip Seymour Hoffman go off to the corner, and I hear Ernst. And I'm thinking, oh God, I just got myself fired. I've just ruined their movie. I've just lost it. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And they come over, and I can see Bennett. They basically realized that I wasn't getting what they wanted from me. Like there was a miscommunication, that I wasn't understanding the character, or they weren't getting, basically they wanted stillness from me. Basically the same thing that happened on Dreamcatcher when I got panicked in the audition and I just started going crazy. Well, this is basically what happened on the set of Capote. And so he comes over and he says, okay, Ernst. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to tell me I'm getting fired. And he goes, here's what we need you to do. They're going to come. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're going to ask you a question. You're going to say, what? They're going to tell you what. You're going to say no. And that's all you're going to say. And they're going to, you don't do anything they want you to do. Just say no. Okay. So they come in, they ask me a question. I say, what? They tell me what? I go, no. They take me out of the thing. They lock me. They take me away. I cut to the theater. I'm there at the premiere with my agent. And we watch the scene, and my agent says, oh my God, that was the most restrained performance I've ever seen you give. And I'm thinking, if you only knew, I'm just a hired meat puppet who was told, don't say anything, say this word, then say this word, then leave, because they knew that I was basically a ball of nerves. And that was the first time I felt like I'm in a room full of actors and I'm a performer. I'm not an actor. I'm the juggler, I'm the jester in the corner, and these are all the real actors around me. And that was the first time I felt like maybe they're going to find out that I'm the fraud that that I've been fooling everybody that I'm not really an actor. But I'm just so excited to have that film on my resume. And even though, they cut my part down, but like I said in an interview, when I was interviewed in Kansas from this one newspaper, I said to him, I had to keep reminding myself the film's called Capote, not Andrews. When they do this film about Lowell Andrews, then they can be about me. But I'm just glad to be in that film. But it's funny how I didn't know that saying about being in your own, knowing your space, being present in your space as an actor. So for example, when I'm sitting in my jail cell and they're across death row and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Clifton Collins are in their cell and they're talking to each other, I'm sitting across there as an actor thinking, ugh, this is boring. I can't even hear them. They're not even acting. What's going on? I can't even hear them. I'm like leaning forward, trying to hear what they're, I'm thinking this movie's going to suck. This movie's boring. Never occurred to me that they're in their space. They know their space, but that space is a jail cell. They're having a private conversation. The camera and the microphones are there. Nobody needs to hear anything. But I come from this way of thinking of, I'm performing for the entire set. I'm performing for the entire crew. They are acting for the scene. And I'm thinking, I can't hear them. So thus it must suck. Not until I saw the movie and I went, oh, the movie's so quiet. No wonder they must have just lost their minds when I started rambling off on this thing. It's embarrassing now to think about it. I just went off on this huge frenetic ramble, and there's this nice quiet movie where everything just slowly paces itself out. But just to have an Academy Award-winning film on your resume is
yeah, I was about to say, it must be great to be part of an Academy Award-winning film. Like, were you watching the Oscars that year? And
well, it's the first time I was actually cheering along with getting excited when people's names were mentioned and things. And when he won, I was so certain when I left that film set, I was like, I already know who's going to win Best Actor. This was like a year before the film. I already knew because it was such a transition. Mm-hmm. They made the clothes he wore were made bigger to make him look smaller. All these little movie tricks that they made. But when you would be offset with him, like in the lunch tent, he never left that character, the voice, because the voice was so different from his real voice. So you'd be talking to him at lunch and he'd still be talking in his voice. And I never really met Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Wow.
I met Capote.
Wow.
And that's why he was the only actor I didn't get to sign my little book, because I was like, I can't bother Capote.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We were, oh man.
Especially since what happened with Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's really great that you got to be a part of that and see him doing what he did best, man.
And you had like a bird's eye view into something that so historical, even because so many people just, he left behind such a great body of work, and you were right there for it. That's an incredible Hollywood.
And here's another little tidbit that nobody would know. When you see my death scene, when you see them taking me across the lot, and they've got me in shackles and they're walking me across to get hanged, it was it was so cold that every time I breathed, I could feel my nose hairs freeze up. And I got nothing on except a pair of denim pants and a shirt, and they put these steel arm hand shackles, and they had these leg shackles, but because it was 5 o'clock in the morning and the sun was starting to come up, and they're like, hurry, we gotta get this shot, and they didn't have my steel leg shackles on yet. So the director says, just walk like you have leg shackles on and we'll add them in post. Well, guess what they didn't add in post? So now it just looks like I shit my pants, because now I'm waddling. When you see it, I'm waddling across this open yard thinking, oh, they're going to add the shackles later. And now I just look like, oh, look at me, I crap my pants.
That's hilarious.
The little stories that nobody knows.
Yeah, we love hearing it, man.
So we're movie geeks, man. We love hearing that kind of stuff.
So are we there yet with Ice Cube?
That was a big movie. That was,
and you played yourself. You played a character named Ernst, and that was hilarious. And that was
and here's how that turned out. First of all, that was the first film I did with Brian Levant. I think I've done 3 or 4 films.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Because I did. The last film I did, he wrote and produced, but he didn't direct, was called The Game of Love, with, surprisingly, another film with Lachlan Monroe and Heather Locklear. And But that was the first film I did with him. I auditioned for that. And I auditioned for the role that MC Gainey got. It's basically a 2 truck driver movie. And I had originally auditioned for the other truck driver. And originally the word had gotten back to me that I was going to get this role. They sent it out, an offer to this American actor named MC Gainey. I didn't know who he was at the time. And if he doesn't want it, then it's yours. Well, he wanted it. So they basically gave me the other truck driver role. So there's the American truck driver and the Canadian truck driver, because it takes on either side of the border. And so when I first got the script, the character's name was Hot Dogger. And it was named Hot Dogger because I drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And that was who I am. I'm the guy who drives the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, and my character's name was Hot Dogger. I think word got back to Oscar Mayer that I'm driving irresponsibly in and out of traffic and smashing into people and stuff. So I think they decided, well, we don't want the Oscar Mayer brand to be attached to this bad driver. So they took the Hot Dogger name away. And then the next script I got, it referred to me as Affable Young Fellow. And then then the next one I got, it said Billboard Truck Driver. And so I kept getting every version of the script I would get back, it would have a different character name. And eventually it just said, Ernst will do this and Ernst will do that. And they basically just gave up on giving me a character name, and they just used my name in the script. And as the actor, as the egotistical actor, I thought, oh, my name in the film, how awesome. And I was like, how can I guarantee that they're going to use this? Because I think they just put Ernst as a placeholder in the script because they couldn't come up with a character name. So they just put Ernst, but I wanted to keep that as my name. Yeah. So I thought, I know when we go to shoot my stuff, if I just say my name every 3 lines, so like, what? Well, Ernst knows how to drive. Get in here. Ernst can help you. Ernst to the rescue. Ernst did it. I just kept throwing my name in everywhere. I figured they can't get rid of it if I just keep adding it everywhere. And so that's how I ended up being Ernst in the film, was because I just kept throwing in my own name, and eventually they couldn't get rid of it. And then the second thing was when I'm driving and we're shooting the scenes, and every time I go to smash into the MC Gainey and his truck, I bang into the thing. And as I'm doing the thing, I'd go bang, bang, and they cut, and Brian says, Ernst, you don't have to say the bang sound effects. We're going to add that. Don't worry. You don't need to add the bang sound effects. So I didn't do it. Then once the film was finished and I had to go in to do some ADR, some additional dialogue recording, he says, first thing we're going to do is we're going to have you go back and add all the bangs, because that's just so goddamn funny. Because I'm so into the car chase that my character is just so into it that he's like creating all his own bang, bang, bang. And
you got that hat too. Yeah.
It's such a funny scene. And then, like we said, it's one of those scenes where, like, it's just like,
and that movie went on to be huge. It was like in the States, it was #1 for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, that movie made bank.
And then they did a sequel, and then they did a TV series.
Yeah.
Oh, the
you're
right. I
series
forgot about the series.
It was like
Terry Crews.
Yeah, Terry Crews. Man, it's just,
but it was so funny that they made such a note to tell me to stop saying bang. And it's like my comedic brain knows this is funny. But if you don't want me to say it, I won't say it. And then it was such a nice come around when they go, okay, we want you to add those back.
That's gotta be a good feeling when,
it's like, gratifying,
because you're kind of actor. We've noticed that, like, you add a lot of your own touches to the roles you play, and then getting to see those like come through, and then
bring it back, like, hey, we want to do that.
That's got to be really fun and like really.
Well, the funny is I remember the best was, I've got the headphones on and I'm listening to. It's so weird when you do dialogue recording in the studio. Most of the times, everybody's in LA or in New York or Chicago or wherever, and you're alone in the studio by yourself. So you've got your headset on and you're listening to them having a conversation. They're in LA talking to you. And the first thing I hear is he's introducing everybody around the set, around the table at Sony. And Brian says, okay, let's just rewind the scene and just play it. And Ernst, every time you think of somewhere you can add the funny, we'll pause it and we'll go with that. So those are the kind of directions as an actor you want to hear. Just tell me where you can add the funny and we'll add it. So that was Brian, and that was my first film with him. And then we ended up working on the Scooby-Doo 3, Mystery Begins. And then he brought me back for A Christmas Story 2,
Yes.
the sequel that never needed to be made, as everyone on the internet calls it.
Yeah.
I think it's a cute movie. I don't, you know.
Why not?
It is
you know?
great. You know, maybe it's not necessary, but it is great to see those characters again in that world again. Like, that's why we like the one they did with Charles Grodin too, you know, like
Yeah. Well, and the thing I find with the internet now, and with we live in a comment section world where everyone feels they need to have an opinion, and 9 times out of 10 they feel they need to have a negative opinion.
Yeah.
And nobody needs to hear it, but everyone feels the need to share it. I think it was the first film, the first trailer on YouTube to receive the most thumbs down in 24 hours or something.
wow. Okay.
That's, I mean,
But once again, it was just like with Scooby and with Kermit, and these things that you grow up with. Everybody knows Christmas Story. Everybody's grown up with, you know, the crosses on the eyes and you're going to shoot your eye out and all that. Everybody knows that film. So just to be in that world, that's all I care, is that I got to be in that world.
yeah, and then you got to get thrown out of the house by Daniel Stern.
Yeah.
How was, and you've worked with him twice. Battle of the
I did 2 Christmas movies with him. I did that and Battle of the Bulbs.
Brewer, right?
It
Yeah.
was a Hallmark movie. Yeah.
Hallmark movie with
Yeah.
that Brewer, really funny, and then you did this movie.
That
so
movie actually got us into, well, we like watch Hallmark. We'll have them on loop all year round, you know. Or
we've worked
around
on
Christmas.
a couple of them, and that
There's
was
a couple of
that
them
was
in
its own
Memphis. Yeah,
experience.
Wasn't a positive.
it was not
experience,
working on the ones they filmed in Memphis was not fun, but
Yeah, but anyway.
but we still like love watching.
Yeah,
those
we still watch them
channels.
we first got, you know, we didn't really watch them every year nonstop until we saw Battle of the Bulbs, because we're like, Matt Frewer, Daniel Stern, like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So then from then on, we started watching them every year. So yeah.
How was he? How was Daniel Stern?
He was a fun guy. The thing about that, I think one reason why I got hired was because Matt and Daniel are both tall.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And then the director, Harvey, was like 6'5". And so when I auditioned, I wasn't looked at as a tall guy. I just looked at as a guy that fits everybody else that's on set. You know, so many times I don't get cast because, you know, I'm 1.5 feet taller than the people on set. But when you have actors that, like when I did a movie, X's Baggage, I got hired on X's Baggage because they needed someone to look intimidating against Christopher Walken. And I think Christopher Walken's like 6'2". So they needed somebody, you know, when someone says to you, okay, we're going to pay you, you're going to work on this film for 6 days. And all we want you to do is eat breakfast and watch Christopher Walken, Benicio Del Toro, and Alicia Silverstone act.
Love that movie.
That movie, that's one of those movies that when my wife comes across it on TV, she'll always stop and end up watching the rest of the film, no matter where it's at. I just love the fact that I got to work with Christopher Walken, and so many of my stories with Christopher Walken come from that. You know, my stories would all be so much better if I could do a Christopher Walken impression, because that's part of the story, is hearing something coming at you with that voice.
Yeah.
But going back to Daniel Stern, it was funny because when I worked with him on Christmas Story 2, he was basically introducing himself to me. And I'm always like, how do you not remember? How do people not remember me?
Yeah, I'm like, you're like up here, you know, how do you not remember that?
How many actors have you worked with that are me?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the actor Tim Matheson.
Oh, yeah.
Very good actor.
Fantastic.
I worked with him on a pilot. I worked with him on a TV movie. Then I worked with him on a pilot, and then I auditioned for him for the show Psych. He was directing an episode, and I was auditioning for it. And he said to me, "Nice to meet you." And it always blows my mind. It's like, yeah, I know I'm not a Hollywood name. I know that I'm not necessarily a name actor, but I'm me. I'm 6'6", 300 pounds. How do you not remember working with me? And then you have to remind yourself, yeah, he's been in the business for 60 years, 50 years, whatever. He's worked with thousands of people.
I think it could also be a boomer thing, because I know like my dad's college roommate, who was my dad's boss for years, coincidentally, like he's introduced himself to me like 20 times. So I think, you know, that it's just one of those things, I guess. That's really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. Matt Frewer, once again, it's like you grew up with Max Headroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's always weird when you're on set and you're like, that's Max Headroom.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
like what I was saying about I'm not starstruck, I'm character struck. It's like, you know, I was like, who's Matt Frewer? Matt Frewer, I don't know who Matt Frewer is, but that's Max Headroom. I know who Max Headroom is.
Yeah, like seeing Ken Park with Wolverine. You know, I mean, like there you go. And,
but yeah, Daniel Stern, the two. It's funny. It's like 2 Christmas movies with him, and working the second time with him. Like I said. Yeah, this is our second film. Really? What? It's like, first of all, I said, this is our second film, and they're both Christmas films. And he goes, really? What? And I'm thinking, well, how many other Christmas films have you done? And then I go, oh yeah, Home Alone.
Yeah, Home Alone 2, yeah.
Yeah, that's how was Christopher Walken working with? Was he like stoic, you know, where you
he's an interesting man. I remember, like I said, my stories are funny if I could do his voice, but that, for example, this diner that we were shooting at, they had this jukebox, and we're looking at the different songs, and he goes, which one do you like? Which one? And I didn't recognize any of the songs. He goes, oh, these are all classics. They were all songs from the 40s and 50s. And he says, anybody have a quarter? And it was funny. He just casually said that, more or less just to me. He said, anybody have a quarter? And all of a sudden, like 6 or 7 crew hands just come over my shoulder with a quarter, because, you know, Christopher Walken asked for a quarter. So he takes it, he puts it in, he picks one, and he looks at me, he goes, may I? And in my brain, I'm going, I think Christopher Walken is asking if I would like to dance with him. Okay. So he presses the thing, and while they're setting up the next shot, they're doing the lighting and the crew's over here. Here's him and I, and then we're basically waltzing in the middle of the scene, waiting for the next take. And then one of my favorite lines from him is, he says, you know, Ernst, I'd like to make enough money in this world that I could buy everybody a puppy. Not that I would, but I'd like to have that as an option.
I think that's the most Christopher Walken thing I've heard.
Yeah.
And another time I'm walking down the stairs to craft service. He's coming up the stairs and he goes, the avocado dip is fucking amazing. But it's like this voice, this iconic voice that you've heard your whole life.
Yeah. We were kind of like that when we worked with Morgan Freeman on this Brian Banks movie where the locations people, and he had to film at the Memphis prison, and it was like really hard to film in there. And then he was just there like eating a Reese's, like he fell asleep at one point, and you heard him talking.
In his chair, like,
it's so weird to see that person in front of you like that.
It was just kind of like your grandpa being around, like, you know, falling asleep in his chair and stuff, but it was Morgan Freeman. So.
So like immediately you have like the Rolodex of every character you've ever seen him play, and now all those characters are sitting there. Not just, you know, that's God sitting there. You know, that's the President of the United States sitting there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's Easy Reader.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's before your time. I don't know. Do you remember Electric Company?
Oh yeah. They did like ones that when we were kids.
Yeah. Christopher Walken, man, like.
But yeah, Christopher Walken, Benicio Del Toro, he had only done Usual Suspects, and I remember he wasn't really known, but anybody who had seen Usual Suspects knew him. And there was one point where the director Marco, we did a scene and Benicio comes running in. He goes, "Well, all I guess, and then the thing is going to go. I mean, it was good." And he's basically mumbling and rambling this whole thing. And I remember Marco, the director, looking over at the script supervisor and going, "Post. We'll fix it in post." It was just like, didn't even want to say to him, you know, we're not, because you didn't want to ruin the energy that he was giving.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like nobody understands what you're saying. But being able to work on that film and just like, we basically, first of all, I got hired to be the guy that gets thrown out the window by Christopher Walken, but they couldn't find a stunt double for me. So I get a call from the stunt coordinator and says, "Are you interested in doing a stunt?" I was like, well, what's the stunt require me to do? Oh, it's nothing big. You just need to, there's a window. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet. You need to go out the window through the glass, turn in the air, and then come down about 10 feet and crash on a balsa wood picnic table. And before she even finished the word picnic table, I said, no. And that's gonna be the end of my career, trying to get out that window, first of all, then turning and crashing. That's not gonna happen. But because I'd already signed my contract, they basically made me trucker number 2, found someone else to be trucker number 1, who they could get a stunt double for, a smaller guy. And because I'd already signed my contract, I basically just had to sit there with my arms crossed and eat breakfast for 6 days. And it was funny, at one point, if you watch the movie, my character goes from eating bacon to eating sausages, to eating bacon to eating sausages every time they cut to me, because at one point the prop master said to me, Ernst, you don't have to eat everything on your plate every take. And then at another point he comes over, he goes, okay, you've eaten my entire supply of bacon. We're having to go to breakfast sausages now. So when you see the film, I'm either eating bacon or it keeps cutting back and forth between sausage and bacon, because I ate all their bacon. Because, I'm a starving actor. Someone's offering me free food, I'm going to eat it.
Oh yeah. So speaking of that, we need to get into one of your first big lead roles was Joe Finds Grace, correct? And then
and in 1996, I did 1995 or 94, I did back when there was no such thing as a fan film. There was just, people made short films, and if they were fans of something. So I did a film called Alien IV ? And this was before there was an Alien 4. Okay. This was like, if they were to, basically the director said, what if they were going to do another Alien, what would be the story? And he basically created this movie. It's a half-hour film. It basically follows all the characters from the third film and where it would lead if there was a fourth film. It's called Alien IV ? And a friend of mine who was in that showed it to a friend of his, just jokingly, look at this little silly independent thing I did. And his friend Anthony saw my character in that film and was writing a script, and immediately thought of me for this role. And when he continued writing the script, he basically continued writing with me in mind. So my friend Michael, who I worked with on this Alien film, calls me and says, I have a friend of mine who wrote a script for you. I was like, what? I've never met the guy. How did he write a script? And it turns out he wrote the lead role in a film for me. I meet the guy. We end up reading the script together, and he decides that, yeah, we're going to do this. And I was still working, as a sales manager at a company. And this was the film. This was in '96 that made me decide, okay, I can't get 9 days off work to go shoot this film. So I'm either going to have to leave that job and decide I'm going to be an actor full time. And if the universe wants me to do this, then the universe is going to find a way for this to happen. And I ended up quitting my job and deciding I'm going to be an actor full time. Took this job on this film, which was for no money. But, when someone writes a lead role in a feature for you, that someone, especially someone you don't know, you're gonna listen. And then when I found out what the role was, I was so excited by the prospect of it. And the fact that Anthony was the director, and he was the lead actor who was going to be wearing prosthetic makeup every day. And it was such a bizarre story. And at that point, it was called Saving Grace. And we shot the film in 9 days. And I ended up becoming, behind the scenes, I ended up becoming a producer, ending up getting more involved in the film. And he never really got the film to go where he wanted it to go as far as his vision for it. So Saving Grace basically sat on the shelf, and nothing came of it. And for 14 years, the film basically sat on the shelf. And then one day, Anthony was watching this documentary that Keanu Reeves hosted, and it was about the resurgence of digital as all about using digital for film. And Anthony saw that and thought, wait, you mean this film that I have, this 60mm film, still has a life? There's something I can do with this? So he immediately took the negative of this film and got it scanned into his computer, which brought new life. First of all, it brought new life to the film. Secondly, it was the first time we'd ever seen the film clear, because we didn't have dailies. We had like what we called bi-monthlies or yearlies, we would shoot the film, stick it in his fridge, and then when we had enough money, we'd go the only way we saw the film is we would project the film on his wall in his living room and film it with a beta cam. And then he had 2 beta decks, and that's how we edited Saving Grace the first time, was with these shots from the wall that we shot. And then he ended up having a Steenbeck with a big flatbed editor and everything. So that's how we made Saving Grace. And 14 years later, he put the thing in the computer and realized some of the story wasn't working. It was more of a romance about this girl. And he decided to create this whole other side story. And then we thought, well, the film's in black and white. Why don't we create, if his real world is black and white, why don't we make his inside his head world color rather than the opposite? And so that's where he decided, because he was an artist, he decided, why don't I animate his visions and his flashbacks and his memories? And so that gave a whole new life to the film. That's where Joe Find Grace came out of, because we decided to make it about his lost sister rather than him searching for this girl who he fell in love with in his ad, and completely changed the film, gave it a whole new life. We brought in new actors, we rotoscoped them and did a whole bunch of new stuff. And then the film that you saw was the end result of that. So we started that in 96 and finished that in 2016. Wow. So when Boyhood likes to go off on their 12-year, it's like we had to hire a whole new actor to play the young Joe, because the young Joe that we had originally hired was now a grown man with a family. Oh. So, and it's like I said, our last festival that we played at was Another Hole in the Head in San Francisco, and we won Best Animation Feature. Yes, and considering the film is only like 30% animated, so to win Best Animation Feature with a film that's only 30% animated, so that's in our back pocket. That film has been my favorite film from the moment I shot it, even when it was Saving Grace. I just love the storytelling. I love the way it was shot. It's a period piece, yet it's contemporary. It's slapstick, yet it's dramatic, and now it's black and white, yet it's a color animated film. It's just
all those amazing prosthetics.
Yeah, and we shot, like I said, we shot for 9 days. He was in makeup for most of those 9 days. And there was one point, our shooting schedule was so tight that Anthony kept the makeup on for 3 days.
He slept in it and everything.
He'd go home at the end of the day, sleep in it, come back the next day to do little touch-ups and everything. And at the end of the 3rd day, because it was 3 hours in the morning, an hour at the end of the day. And when you're also the director and we're on shooting a feature in 9 days is a pretty tight schedule to start with.
Oh, yeah.
So he says, I can't that's 9 hours right there that I could use for shooting. So at the end of the 3rd day, I had to stick around to see what the end result was going to be. When they took that thing off, he had scabs all over his face. His beard had started growing into the latex. I mean, there's a reason why you don't wear prosthetic makeup for 3 days.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But it's funny, him going to work in the morning, driving into like the Arby's drive-through with his makeup on. And the biggest thing on my first day of shooting, the day before we started shooting, Anthony called and says, okay, everything's good, we're ready to go. I just need to get your license number for insurance, and then we're good to go. And I said, driver's license? I don't have a driver's license. He says, have you read the script? I said, of course I've read the script. He says, you're driving for like 40% of the movie. How do you not know you need a license? I said, I thought this was like a film, you're going to be towing me, or it's going to be on a green screen or something. He said, we don't have the budget for that. So I said, hold that thought. I ran over to, the DMV, to the license place. I wrote my learner's permit, got my learner's permit license, came back, and I go, here you go. Here's my learner's permit license number. And what they ended up doing is they ended up having the gaffer or one of the grips who had a driver's license sitting on the floor next to me, as if I was going out for my lesson. And anytime if someone stopped us, he would just pop up and say, oh, we're just going out for a lesson. Never mind the fact that there's lights and a camera hanging off the front of the van. He said, well, we're recording our lesson. But yeah, I basically shot that entire movie with a learner's permit. And even though it is me driving in the whole movie, and so much so that on the first day of shooting, Anthony is still off at home getting his makeup done. He hasn't shown up yet. We're rehearsing the first scene, which is me pulling up to an intersection in that van. I pull up to an intersection and there's a sign that says left or right. And I have to decide which way am I going. I'm looking for Joseph. So I have to decide, am I going left or right? And at one point I decide, I don't know. So I'm just going to do a 3-point turn and go back the way I came. Well, this vehicle had like a 10-foot extension added to the back of it that went beyond the where the axle was. So the whole thing, first of all, you couldn't see, if you looked in the rear view mirror, you couldn't see the back of this thing. It was so long because they had added to it. And it was so bumpy. If there's the one scene in the movie where you see the whole van, the wheels go off the ground. That's because every time I'd hit a little bump, the whole thing would go off the ground. So Anthony is just showing up to set, and the first thing he sees is me get to this 3-point turn. I pull out and I slowly, and then quicker and quicker, and I back into the telephone pole, smash the whole back of this truck. And because I don't know what I'm doing, I freak out. I put the car in neutral, hit the gas. Tires are spinning. I'm not going anywhere because I'm freaked out. The gaffer who is sitting on the floor next to me has all of the camera equipment on top of him, which landed on top of him when I crashed into the telephone pole, smashing it back into the truck. So the very first thing Anthony sees is he's pulling up on the set with his makeup on. He pulls in, and the first thing he sees is me backing straight into this telephone pole. And the worst part of it was, that was a rehearsal. I still had to shoot that shot, which I ended up doing after that. But for the rest of the movie, there's a big dent, unexplained big dent in the back bumper of the truck in that movie. And that's why. So when Ellie steps out of the back of the truck, she steps down over this bent bumper. Now you know why the back of the bumper's all bent. But yeah, that's a film I'm proudest of. I'm still pushing to get distribution for it. It's such a hard film to sell because, it doesn't fit a category, but I think there's an audience for it. They just have to find it, or we have to find them.
Yeah,
we're so glad we got to see it at the cinematic.
Yeah, that's how we
film festival in Memphis.
For viewers,
Tennessee.
That's how we got connected with Ernst here. Is I posted on my Facebook about seeing this amazing movie.
And we both had crushes on Ellie Harvey growing up. She played a Morticia on the new.
My personal favorite Morticia is Ellie Harvey.
Probably
easily, because we just grew up watching that show. She was so good. So I posted about seeing this amazing movie called Joe Finds Grace and how fun the festival is, and how great it was to see Ellie Harvey. And then I think you commented on it saying glad you liked it and all this stuff. And then we just kind of kept the little back.
And in the theater when we were at the festival, Ian's like, it's the pancake guy.
Is it pancakes? Like,
is it pancakes?
Is that
He knew right away.
I was like, is that Campisi, man? And then we were like, this is great, because like I said, like the movie has this like sort of mysterious vibe to it, which I think really,
and in the whole animation,
and the animation adding that
the black and white, it was just we loved it.
And Ellie's character is just jumps off the screen. She's got those big silent movie eyes, and her character is so animated, and she's just so good. And I think on top of Morticia, I think Joe Finds Grace is one of her better performances. I think it's at the top of the list for her.
Yeah, she's very keyed in that role. Like she just knows exactly what she's doing. And you the same people. So good luck with the distribution. Like that journey, and then we
can't wait to see it again. Yeah.
And it's just like we're really excited for that, and just it's a beautiful project, just an amazing story. And then the same kind of group you guys went on, and you're working on Exuvia. Is it?
Yeah, Anthony and I, after we worked on Saving Grace originally, we went on and he wrote and produced a film called Dark Water, which was about
produced that one too as well.
Yeah, and that film, he didn't direct that film, but he co-wrote and co-produced that film, and I ended up becoming a co-producer, and we basically started a working relationship, and that's how I ended up becoming a producer on Joe Finds Grace after that, because I just got more and more involved behind the scenes. And then when it came time to do the next film, he had told me he had written a film called Exuvia, and if I was interested in producing it with him right from the beginning. And so we started working out the logistics of how we're going to tell this story about this kid who's had a troubled past, and he comes to spend a summer with a nanny who's had her own troubled past. And they basically it's like a coming of age story between this boy and his nanny. And basically where the word exuvia comes in, exuvia is the shell that the dragonfly, or when they leave a shell behind, that when they grow into, they basically leave their shell. That's called the exuvia. And the whole film is about shedding the skin of your past and moving forward. And so we started breaking out the story, and we realized that we have a story, we want to shoot it. Anthony had just finished doing a recurring role on a Disney freeform show called Siren. He ended up playing.
Very, very good. My mom's obsessed with that show.
He played the admiral in the first season. He was the head military guy. So he made some good money on that. So he bought himself a camera. He bought himself all the equipment. He bought himself lights and bought everything that we would need, sound equipment, to shoot our own film. And then once we found out the actors that we wanted and we were able to cast the film, we cast 2 people that had basically no credits in the leads, which, you're putting a lot of faith in when your 2 lead actors are, 70% of the film is just the 2 of them together. And then you're casting a child who's never done a film and an actress who's barely done anything. But the performances are just out of this world, so much so that we've already, with total faith, we've been submitting the film to, we decided to start at the top. So we submitted it to Sundance and Rotterdam. We submitted it to the Berlin Film Festival, to CineQuest, to South by Southwest. We submitted it to Tribeca, Melbourne Film Festival, Hong Kong Film Festival. So we're starting at the top as far as, the last film, it was a much harder getting it into festivals because basically only genre type film festivals wanted to see that film. The rest of them didn't know what to do with Joe Finds Grace. But when it came time to shoot, we totally self-funded the film. And for the majority of it, Anthony and I were the only crew for the entire film. So there'd be days on set where it was like 2 actors, me and Anthony, and that's it. And he was the director, producer, writer, and the director, camera operator. He was also the production designer, and he was in charge of props. And then I would be the first AD and the production manager and the sound recordist and charge of the costumes and catering. And basically all these people who say, I can't shoot a movie unless I have 100 people to help me.
I know.
Oh yeah.
You don't. If you really want to make the movie, what it comes down to is pre-production. If you can work it all out ahead of time and know what needs to be done, okay, and we know all the things, like for example, you 2 could easily make your own movie, just the 2 of you.
Oh yeah, we've done that.
Oh yeah. Sometimes we've had to be a 2-person crew.
And then,
before.
You're a jack of all trades, and then in film, if you really want to make it, you have to be
you have to be willing to just
you have to have a mind for like every part of the production.
Yeah.
And you're obviously like that because you were like a sponge. I feel like you got on set and you just like soaked everything in, and you learned.
Well, the biggest thing I in my career, what I've done is I like to. I'm not one of these people who likes to hang out in their trailer. I like to just sit in a chair on set, and when I do, I tend to like say, okay, this guy over here in the blue shirt, what does he do? I don't know. I'm going to watch him. And then I'll just watch him for a couple hours and just see what this guy does. And okay, he's doing it. And then on the next day, I'll watch this person. And the best way to learn what everyone's doing on set is just watch. And, as an actor, you can get so stuck in your own little mindset, your own little world of I'm an actor and we're here feeling special about myself. But the reality is we're all just cogs. We're all just on the same wheel here. We're all just trying to make the same project. We're all trying to work together as one big family. And when you learn what everybody does and you learn what's involved, then you can know, okay, now if we need to make this film ourselves, which one of these things can we get away with doing ourselves, and which one of these things can we get away with not having? We decided we don't need hair and makeup. The actors can be natural looking. We're going to shoot it in 4K, so you got to be really particular with makeup when you're shooting that clear, because otherwise everybody looks like a clown. So we decided women already do their makeup. They can do their own makeup, and the boy doesn't need makeup. He's a boy. The one character was a heroin addict, so she had a bit more history. So we ended up bringing a makeup artist and an assistant in for 2 days to do her makeup, because there's some things that we want to specify, like scabs and cuts and stuff on her to make it look like she's been through hell. But as far as, because we owned the equipment and because everything was battery operated, we made sure everything was battery operated. So we weren't dependent on plugs. We weren't dependent on power. As long as we had our entire production kit was fit into a carry-on bag.
Dude,
Because we shot it with a Lumix GH5 camera, which is just basically your standard 35mm camera. So that hung around his neck. Now we just look like tourists going out. So we could shoot in the mall, we could shoot at the train station, we could shoot in the train, we could shoot wherever we needed to shoot. I mean, we shot in a grocery store for like an hour and a half in the middle of a grocery store. Nobody even knew we were shooting a film, and then we shot in a dollar store for probably 2 hours.
Guerrilla style, yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
it. Like
yeah,
we're definitely those type of filmmakers.
Yeah, and that's
like,
great that you and Anthony have like created this like kinship where you just keep working together, and keep producing, content.
I can't wait to see what you guys do next, and best of luck with that movie. Like that's
and it's
incredible.
It become, because we like what he did, the same thing, because he knew on Joe Finds Grace, he knew that he was going to be in makeup and he was going to be busy with that. So him and the director of photography did the same thing for months ahead of time. They worked it all out. They used little chess figures and little dinky cars and stuff, and they worked out basically, okay, we're going to shoot this, and we're going to block shoot this, and you're going to be here and I'm going to be there, and we're going to. So when you get on set, all that discussion's been had, and now it's all just like you look at each other and go, remember we're here. And that's the thing it was with Anthony and I. We figured if we spent enough time ahead of time working out, now he had the entire film storyboarded, and we had each scene broken down with those storyboards. So because he wrote the film, he's directing the film, he knows what he wants to get out of the film, he knows the finished product in his head. So he would just shoot it until he sees what he sees in his head. And you need someone to hold this light, okay, I'll hold this light. You need someone to hold the sound, I'll hold the sound. So it would be nice to have more crew, but you don't need more crew.
You gotta have real vision like you guys and like Anthony to pull that off. Yeah. As long as you know what you.
Oh, I like your. I just noticed your hat. That's funny. This whole time.
Oh yeah, that's another eBay gift. You got me a while back.
I got one of those, and I got a plumber's jacket that says "Say It Isn't So." They gave me a big jacket to go with it. Dudley Do-Right, the jacket I got from Dudley Do-Right has a big embroidery of Dudley Do-Right on the back of the jacket. It's funny because
gotta send us some photos. Yeah.
So many of the crew were embarrassed by they're like, I'm never going to wear this because they had a big embroidery of Dudley Do-Right on the back. It's too important. It's like, you go to thrift stores for a couple of years afterwards. I'd go to thrift stores and stuff, and you'd see like Dudley Do-Right jacket hanging in the thrift store. It's like, I can't believe people that just, I'm too embarrassed to wear that. I'm not going to wear that.
Yeah. It's probably worth like $1,000 now. Dudley Do-Right crew jacket. Yeah.
This was hard to find that actually. So
you said you're working with Henry Thomas.
I just finished a film with Henry Thomas. I just went into the studio last week to do some ADR, some additional sound recording. It was basically 2 hours of me going.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of articles on IMDb and stuff like that where they're talking about the movie and your name's just everywhere. It's really cool. And
it's nice to be to be on set and you're number 3 on the call sheet.
That's got to be great.
So the last 3 or 4 days of shooting was just me and Henry in a crawl space fighting, and it's like, I'm being choked. I'm choking him. He's choking me. And at one point you're like, I'm fighting Elliot, and
well, you grew part of
you were like what 12, 11, 10, 11, 12 when ET came out. What is that like? You go up on set and you're meeting freaking Elliot from like the freaking best movie ever made. Like what is that?
It's trippy because even though he's a grown man, he still looks exactly like he looked in ET. I mean, when you see him in like Midnight Mass and stuff, he's made to look older and he's got a mustache and everything. But when you just see him as Henry, he just looks like a bigger version of Elliot. And his son looks his son is the same age as Elliot. So it's bizarre because he looks exactly like Elliot, and his name is Henry Thomas too. So, it's like there's Henry Thomas as Elliot. But the cool thing, we shot one scene where the whole thing is about, he plays a plumber, and he's working on this house in this person's crawl space. Well, what he doesn't know is that a bunch of illegal poachers, tree poachers, have hidden their drug money down in this crawl space. And then we come back to retrieve it, and he ends up being down there. And so it's like him battling us. He's trying to get out of this crawl space. We're trying to get into this crawl space. We want the money, but he doesn't want us to have the money. So the whole movie ends up being this big battle between me and my partner and Henry Thomas. And at one point, this character, this FBI agent, walks by and says, "Who are you?" And he says something like, "Me, I'm just the plumber," and keeps walking. And on the one take, he goes, "And I also happen to play Elliot in E.T." So somewhere there's an outtake of that. That was, the entire crew just lost it, because it's so funny when they can be, they can make light of themselves and joke about the fact that everyone, he says he doesn't go a day. There hasn't been a day since E.T. where he hasn't heard mention of E.T. Someone at some point is going to bring up E.T. It's crazy to think that one of your first things is still, after being in like 100 films or whatever, it's still the one thing that people remember you as.
Yeah, not to mention he was only like 10 years old too. Yeah,
I know, it's really something, man. And
he had a great role in Dr. Sleep. He played Jack Nicholson, Jack Torrance.
That was incredible. And I didn't even know
it was him until like, I think our mom told us like halfway through. Like,
he's got a really great streak going, and it's so awesome. Like
to see him.
Well, he's been in all the Mike Flanagan things. He was in Gerald's Game. He was in Dr. Sleep. He was in both Hauntings. He was in the Midnight Mass. And I think he did the Ouija, I think, Mike Flanagan, when he did the Ouija film, he may have been in that. So I think they're buddies, and he's just basically been in everything that he's done. Right. But knowing that Henry Thomas is number 1 and you're number 3 on the call sheet, it still can't wrap my head around that. I mean, who else is in the film? Jennifer Robinson, who's in Schitt's Creek, who plays Chris Elliott's wife. Yes. She's in that. She's hilarious in this film. And the show The Magicians, Olivia Taylor Dudley, or one of those things, is people. And what always blows my mind, like when I just did this film Love Hard that just came out on Netflix this week, and I'm talking with Darren Barnett and Nina Dobrev on set, and I'm like, as we're sitting there all talking, I'm like looking them up on social media. And I go to her, and she has 22.5 million followers on Instagram. I'm like, who are you? It's like, it's funny. It's like, especially when you're older and there's a whole bunch of people that have come up after you, like younger people that are, 20, 30, 40, and you have no idea who these people are. And especially like when I did the film To All the Boys, I was in the third one of this To All the Boys I Loved Before. I was in the third one, and the whole cast of that, but to me, they're just a bunch of no names. I never heard of any of these people. And then as you're sitting there working with them and you're looking on social media, it's like 2 million followers, 10 million followers, 20 million followers. It's like, I am so out of the loop, apparently, because I don't know any of these people. And then you find out that, the one, Nina Dobrev, she was on Vampire Diaries.
Yep. Our mom, like, we used to watch. Our mom wanted to know, because our mom's a huge Nina Dobrev fan. I mean, we are too. We saw her at her very beginning because she was on Degrassi, the Degrassi that was on
the Canadian show, yeah.
And the version that was on when we were teenagers, and that's how and our mom wanted to know what it was like working with her.
Well, did you happen to see Love Hard?
Well, it premiered right when our festival started, so we're like waiting till after the festival.
It's Christmas time, so we're gonna
like sit down with mom and just have like make a night out of it.
Probably gonna watch it like 5 times before Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, you'll once you see it, you'll understand the title, because I've read so many reviews. People are like, "Oh, stupid title." Well, it's because they didn't pay attention to the film. But once you pay attention to the film, you'll understand the title. But here's a little. First of all, I'll show you here's a little Easter egg for people. This is something that won't make any sense to you until you see the film.
Okay.
And
all right,
you'll see this. I'm not going to let you see what the song request is.
Okay.
This is the actual card that Nina hands me in the film. That's all I'll tell you. But there's only one of these in the world, and I have it. It's when you're on set and the actress you're in a scene and somebody has to do something and they give you a prop, and then we wrap the scene and everything, and you're like, well, is nobody gonna take that? Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's a movie memorabilia. I'll have it if nobody wants it. But yeah, she was great. She's just a down to earth, she's just your regular old Canadian, basically, who's way more famous than I had any clue that she was when I worked with her. Like I said, I never watched Vampire Diaries. I didn't watch Degrassi. I didn't watch any of these things. I was just happy to be working because the film was directed by Hernan Jimenez, and his first English-speaking film was Elsewhere, a film that I worked with him, and Ken Jeong was on that film, and Parker Posey.
Bridges?
Low Bridges was on that
yeah,
film. Jackie Weaver was on that film. Aidan Young was on that film. Jackie Tone was on that film. So I got to hang out and work with Ken Jeong on that film. And so that was Hernan's first English-speaking film, because he's from Costa Rica, and he's a famous stand-up comedian down there, but he does everything in Spanish. So when he did this film, I worked on this film with him. I had such a good time. And then when he was coming back to Vancouver to shoot his second film, I get an offer, straight direct offer, to come work again on this film with him. So whenever you don't have to audition for something and somebody wants you to be part of their film, why would you say no? It doesn't matter the size of the role. It was just a small little, but it was a funny scene, and it was an integral scene in the film. So I was excited to come out and work with him again. But yeah, Nina Dobrev was, all I can say is the scene that I did with her, she gave it. She gave her all. She went for it. She's a bit of it's a very comedic role, and it's a very, let's just say she had to give of herself in this scene, and she went for it. So I think you'll enjoy the film, but you'll definitely enjoy the scene I did with her, because you won't be expecting what happens, and it's worth the ride. But yeah, Love Hard. Crawlspace, I think, we're working towards the end of the year release for that. And I heard that Viacom, CBS Viacom Global has picked it up for worldwide release.
Congrats, man.
So,
Congrats.
it's Paramount. And so that's always exciting to know that there's some names and some money behind the film you did. So it'd be nice if I could be an overnight sensation after 31 years.
I Love Hard is killing it on Netflix. I mean,
Yeah, I think it was #1 worldwide there for a while.
that's awesome. I
It's
mean,
legit, yeah.
and then to All the Boys Always and Forever, those movies, just they're
bit,
huge.
yeah.
I mean, they're just, being a part of,
Yeah, and I worked on the third film as the principal of the high school.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a certain population, those movies are everything to them. It's like I had never heard of the first two films when I shouldn't say only the first film existed, because they shot the second and third film back to back.
Okay.
And we shot them prior to COVID. So it was weird when the film finally came out. It's like, here's these big graduation scenes and these big prom scenes, and it's filled with hundreds of people. And it's like, yeah, we shot this before COVID, because I don't think those scenes would have existed.
Yeah.
And you've had a great career, man.
You were in the black and white episode of the X-Files, which is just a classic episode.
Postmodern Prometheus.
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember you were in the new Are You Afraid of the Dark? The revamp that they did. You played the clown.
Yeah, we watched that actually with our mom. We're like, hey, Mom, that's Ernst.
And we noticed how you play clowns a lot, which we think is cool. You play big babies and you play clowns a lot.
Oh, in Dead Rising Watchtower, I was Bonzo, the zombie.
Yeah, which is just hilarious. And then Outer Limits, huge cult show. And then you got to work with some amazing actors on that. I think
Colin Mockery. It's funny, I played Silverface, and I was silver from head to toe. And once again, it's like when the makeup trailer, and they're trying to figure out the look for me. And I said, well, why don't we just shave my head, and then you can paint me completely silver. I'll look like a big ball bearing. The good thing about being an actor who's willing to have fun with the role, it's like when I did the Dead Zone, I was playing a biker, and I said to Anthony Michael Hall was in the makeup chair next to me, and he was also directing that episode. And I said to him, wouldn't you like it if I had like a mohawk or something? I think the biker would have a mohawk. he goes, would you be willing to do that? And I said, yeah. And I said, even better than that, what if it was like a snake and it was like thick in the front and then it like did like a swirl all the way to the back and then ended up with a little point in the back. So he's like, if you're willing to do that, sure, yeah. So I like being able to, I always look at my face, my hair and everything as the palette.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I've noticed that you keep telling us about roles where you just like ended up shaving your head in very weird ways, like the baby tuft head or just shaving it completely. You're just that guy.
You're up
just
for
like,
anything,
you're like,
man.
you know
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Go for it.
some actors are like, you don't touch my mustache. I mean, hell, Cesar Romero couldn't even shave his mustache when he played
so funny looking.
what was it? Who was he? The Joker?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had to paint the white makeup over his mustache. It's like,
Yeah, oh man. And then like, you're a very selfless actor. We've seen through all this. Like,
you really give yourself to the
you give
project
yourself like
and the role.
100% to anything you're in.
well, when you see Crawlspace, you'll know about giving her, because man, I spent half that film in a crawl space on my hands and knees.
Oh man, okay, that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm not the most agile. I'm not physically built for crawl. When you're in your 50s and you have to start crawling, you realize how long it's been since you've crawled.
Oh man, I do want to ask about X-Files. What was that like being on the set of the X-Files when at the height of its popularity? And
yeah, the height of its popularity, and also the episode I did was written and directed by Chris Carter. So not only am I in X-Files, but the creator and the main guy is the guy who wrote the episode and is directing the episode. So there were days where I remember I had a 21.5-hour day.
Jeez.
I had an 18-hour day, because when you're working with the creator, nobody's going home till he sees what he sees in his head, and who's going to tell him otherwise? He's also the executive producer. He's the guy, it's his show. Yeah. But when we shot, I ended up in the hospital because when we were shooting the scene in the barn where we're all in the barn and you've got all of the people that are protesting, they're in the barn and they've got their pitchforks and their lanterns and all the animals and everything. There's a big chaos scene in the barn, and I have a lantern and I ended up slipping on the mud and went face first into the dirt with this lantern. The lantern smashed right next to my head. I ended up all my weight on my knee. So they ended up having to put me in an ambulance, take me to the hospital. And in the middle of shooting, they get me to the hospital. They wheel me into the emergency room, into this waiting room, like an emergency room, an examination room in the ER, to put me on this table, and then they leave, and nobody's there. I'm just sitting there, laying on this table, and I was much heavier then. I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, I can feel the table starting to tilt. The table is starting to move, and I'm down. The whole table, the leg on the table broke, came crashing down. The table landed on top of me. The nurse comes running into the room, doesn't know what to expect, and she opens the door, and there's me on the floor with the table on top of me with the leg all bent. They ended up getting me back up on the thing, fixing my knee, getting me back to set. And there's a big famous scene where I come running out of the barn and I'm yelling, "The barn's on fire!" Well, that was supposed to happen in the melee of everybody running out of the barn and everything. But they shot all that while I was in the hospital. So I figured, well, there goes my part. I'm not going to get to do my big close-up. And we get back and Chris said, "Don't worry, Ernst, we've saved your line for you." They'd already shot all the barn stuff, but they brought me over to a side by the barn, by the farm where we were at, and we shot it all in close up, and they had me come run up the camera and do the thing. So it was a nice moment between Chris Carter and I, because, he felt bad that what happened as far as me getting injured. And here's me at the hospital for 3-4 hours thinking, well, that's it. That's the end of my day. And then going back to set and finding out that they've been waiting for me so they can do this reshoot of this little scene. And what I remember the most, it was pouring in rain. It was like 3:00 in the morning. And here was Chris Carter and I huddled under an umbrella, watching a 5-inch monitor on this black and white TV. And we're watching Party of Five. And he leans over and he says, "Don't worry. He has the non-cancerous version of Hodgkin's disease. it's these watching Party of Five and the one character in there had Hodgkin's disease or something, but it's just bizarre memories of sitting in a farm field with Chris Carter at 3 a.m. under pouring rain, watching a 5-inch monitor of Party of Five. Those are my memories of. But when you talk about what's your memories of certain, that has nothing to do with the X-Files. It has to do with, him going and getting me a bowl of soup, that kind of stuff.
That's what's great about your career. It's just spanned all this.
Gotten to work with so many amazing people, so many amazing directors.
You've got to hone
there's
in
not
your
like one
talents.
person who's seen a movie or TV show that hasn't watched something with you in it.
That's true, and that's very, very, very much. That's a very good blanket.
And here's another little tidbit for you as being fans of film and TV. In that X-Files episode, in the scene, especially the scene in the diner where you see all the different townsfolk congregate in the diner. In that episode, one of the townsfolk is this little woman, and that's the same woman who plays my mother in 13 Ghosts. So both the great child and the dire mother are both in that X-Files episode.
Oh man.
So next time you watch that X-Files episode, you'll see that she's in that episode as well. And the woman who plays the waitress in the diner, the one who pours the coffee on David Duchovny's crotch, she's the one who plays the pilgrimess in 13 Ghosts.
Oh wow.
The one whose hands are in the stocks.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
Xantha Radley. So you have all these little tidbits in there that people don't even know about if they're fans of films and fans of TV, that they don't even realize all these people are in that same shot.
Man,
man.
that's like, you just have this wealth of
yeah.
I love hearing all of it, man. We got to do a part 2 sometime, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you enough for
just for
sitting down with us,
and then being open with us about your career, talking about how what you've learned from each set, who you've worked with, what it was like. Like, here's all
to pick your brain.
Here's all the notes we had.
Yeah.
To be like,
it's a Twilight Saga New Moon notebook.
So this is like one of my director's notebooks, and then you're just like, look at all that.
Yeah.
Even got more over here because there was some runoffs. So it was just like.
So what all do you have back there? I'm looking at the different. You have Dudley Do-Right.
Valentine, we know you had a role in that.
Oh yes, I just emailed Jamie Blanks, the director, on Twitter. I was telling him the only part of me that made the final cut. There's one shot in the party scene at the mansion. You see my left ear, and I told Jamie Blanks, I said, "This is the best paid ear in Hollywood because I've gotten more residual checks for this ear being in that film, because that's one of those films that they air all the time." And because what happened was they shot the master of the party scene, and I play the doorman at that party at the mansion in that film, and everybody has to come through me to get into the party. But we shot the master, so they set up the scene. You see me in the corner by the door. Well, then they ran out of time and they decided to scrap all my stuff. So I ended up not doing anything in that film, but because I'm in that one master shot, I'm technically in the film. Yeah. So I still get residuals for it. I'm not in the credits, but my ear is in the film.
So we have
famous,
a Blacktop. This actually is a 3-pack, but it has Are We There Yet in it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's got Rob Reiner's Colossal Misfire North, which we love.
Oh yeah.
And then some movie called The Last Day of Summer.
Yeah, so it's a nice little collection. We got it like the dollar store. They just had it.
Bizarre.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And this is the VHS and the DVD of
Sadism. So.
Yeah, I got both of those.
Do right here on DVD, and then Christmas Story 2 on Blu-ray.
We went around our mom's house and our dad's house just like last week, picking up anything Ernst Harth related we could find.
And I'm sure there's still.
That's why I ended up bringing Scooby. Yeah,
there's still a few.
Christmas of 3rd grade, he's still with me. Yeah.
I was just going to say, give me 2 seconds and I'll show you one thing that you've never seen before I let you guys go.
Oh, man, great.
Let me just grab it. I'll be right back.
I do.
It'll be worth it.
Oh, man. All right.
All right, here we go.
Oh, no way.
Oh, shit.
What the?
So when I did 13 Ghosts, they had this, my color sample. It was like, so they could do the paint the same every day.
Yeah.
This was sitting on the stand in front of me. So as they would paint me up every day, they had a color sample. And it's, where's the camera? Oh, here you go.
There you go. Oh wow, dude, this is crazy.
What is that made of?
Plaster, probably.
Plaster.
I bet that freaks your wife out when she sees that in the house.
Oh, please tell me you've like left it on your pillow when you left to go to the bathroom. So she like looks over and sees that. Oh man.
You see, it's got all the same makeup.
It's got great detail
It's so
too.
detailed. Wow.
Did you have to like stick your head in like a mold for that?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
That's
So,
film history right there,
they
man.
gave me that when I finished the film. They said, "You want this?" Why would I not want that?
Exactly.
But yeah, because I was, like I said, I was heavier when I shot that. So now my wife likes to say that if I get that big again, this is what I'll look like in my coffin.
Oh, well, I mean, it's you know, it's such an iconic character. Seeing that, that's
yeah.
that is hilarious.
I'll have to send you a picture. One film that I did that you never saw, I did a film. I was supposed to do a film called Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters.
Yeah, the sequel. Yeah.
And I got cast as a character named Boarman. Originally, all the characters were going to be physical effects, like makeup effects.
Yeah.
And they ended up on the last makeup camera test day, there was 4 different monsters that we all ended up getting cut, and they ended up doing it with CGI. And from what I heard, the film was just a big CGI mess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the first one was a hit, but the second one, no, it didn't really.
the character I played was half human warrior, half wild boar. And I had this big wild boar animatronic head and big full outfit and everything. And then there was a character who played Manticore, was like a half lion, half scorpion. That was Daniel Cudmore, who was in X-Men, played Cyclops or something.
Yes.
Yeah, we know him. He was in the Twilight movies.
He's in the Twilight movies too.
Yeah. So it was, I was supposed to shoot up here for a month and then go down to New Orleans and shoot for a month at the old Six Flags that got abandoned after Katrina.
Yes.
They shot Jurassic World there. Yeah.
So I was I had to get tetanus shots and get a bunch of stuff so I could shoot down there. And then once they canned me because they decided to go CGI, I had to pay our play contract. So I got paid anyways.
Yeah.
You were able to buy a nice used car instead of a new car.
Yeah.
But
That's nice.
the thing I was thankful was we were going to be shooting in August in New Orleans, and with prosthetic makeup on in August, oh my God. So I'm thankful I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that would be a nice little surprise. Not many
Dude, that
people
was
have
a
seen
great
it.
thing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And thanks so much. Like I said, we're taking all this time to sit down, and I know we've been planning this.
We
for
could
a
talk
while.
for like a week about
I
all
know.
this crazy
And we've been
stuff.
viewers. We've been planning this for like a while. So
It's been a few years since we've been trying to get this interview going. Yeah.
He's a very busy man, and he
Yeah.
took time out of his very busy. I mean, if you've seen his IMDb page, like, I mean, seriously, it's like one of the longest ones I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully we'll get to work together someday.
yeah, and then can't wait to see what you end up doing next and the new projects you have on the pipeline. Just really excited. So like, just thanks, man.
Oh,
No
yeah.
problem. Thank you for having me.
Oh, for
Oh,
sure,
yeah,
anytime, man.
anytime.
Like I said, we have to do a part 2 sometime soon.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I'm feeling that.
Much more.
Yep.
Definitely.
Rest of the TV credits.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
God.
Didn't even mention Baby Boy Tremor, Smokin' Aces too.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, no, okay. Actually, that's one of my favorite roles in any of one of my favorites, because the fact that like you get one of those human cannons, and then instead of having like you put like you kidnap people and put clown makeup on them or something,
Yeah.
as I recall, because it's been about 5 years since or when it came out. And then you put the dynamite to them and you shoot them through the cannon, and they're just the bomb, and they land in like the bar and it blows everybody up. And then you're the one picking up
that? Yeah.
he's the one picking up the clowns the whole time and shoving them in there. And it's
Yeah.
like it's just like that is an iconic character there, man.
Well, considering that I'm using them, I'm exploding them,
Yeah, see.
and then how do I die? I end up dying because Vinnie Jones pops a grenade on me and ends up imploding me.
Irony.
Oh man.
And yeah, Michael Parks, that's another actor that I just great to have worked with. He played my father in that. And
Yeah,
he's another one of those actors who's in all the Quentin Tarantino films. He's been around in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, he was on the big TV show. Yeah. He was on something.
So yeah, there's lots more to talk about.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But
Well, thanks a lot for having me.
oh man,
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Here's what we like to do: a 3-way pound into the whip.
Oh yes. Woo!
And Forrest, our blind basset hound.
Yeah, there he is. He's been behind Ian the whole time.
We've
We've been moving around.
Oh,
This couch is kind of like, we got a new couch. It's kind of uncomfortable, but it's comfortable for him.
He seems to
yeah.
love it. So
Yeah.
hello.
Follow him,
hello.
famous Force Bassett on Instagram, everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's kind of confused right now.
Yeah.
But man, like I said, we gotta get together to do a part 2 sometime soon, and
yeah.
like let's
Can't wait to get this all edited together too.
Ernst, you're the man. Like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like
Keep doing what you're doing.
yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and
Thank you.
over and out.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later, buddy.
Bye-bye. The A-Team, of course. Yeah, who didn't love the A-Team? I love it when a plan comes together. B.A. Baracus, the van, Mr. T, all that stuff. Yeah, I was a boy when that came out, so of course I was into all that. And my dad loved that show, so it was something that him and I could watch together, but that was it. It was just a show on TV. Never thought I could be part of that world. As far as playing Gilbert, there was no audition per se. I had done Smokin Aces 2 with P.J. Pesci was the director, but Joe Carnahan, that's his baby. He was involved as far as he was the producer of that. And I think, and no one's ever told me this, but I think that he liked my work on that and told the casting director to contact me and to have me come out and play Gilbert, because there was, like I said, no audition. I got a phone call, says that Joe wants you to come out, and I came out. Basically got to create the character. I came up with the little handle, the little pencil thin mustache and the glasses and my hair that cut the way it was, and came to set, and we basically played. I think some of it might have been scripted, but it felt like a lot of it was, we just improv. We just ad-libbed our way through it. So it was a fun little bit. Working with Liam Neeson, of course, that was exciting because, Liam Neeson. It was also it was like the big white elephant in the room because his wife, it hadn't been that long since his wife died. And, here I am in a crematorium with him and throwing his body into the crematorium oven. So nothing was said, but I had that heavy feeling on me the whole time. So I felt a little better when the body that I pushed into the crematorium oven wasn't his. It was a photo double. So I felt a little better about that. And then when we do the big scene where it's revealed that he comes out of the crematorium oven, we shot that a couple ways. We shot it as you see it in the film, with him all burnt to a crisp, standing up and saying his little one-liner. And then we shot it another way, as if he had not been in the crematorium oven, but that he had been in the morgue in the cooler. And so, as you see, I'm punching the door of the cooler, the freezer door of the morgue. And the way we also shot it was, when I do that, we reveal that he has escaped from there, and he was basically nude. They had him wearing a tiny little skin-colored G-string, and he was basically bent down. If you remember the reveal of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in The Terminator, when he appears from the other world and he's all crunched down naked and everything, that was basically how they had Liam Neeson's character. And then he stood up and he said his little thing about devil walks into a bar, or whatever that line was. So we had shot it 2 different ways, and I had no idea until the film came out which one they were going to use. I think the way they shot it worked out good. Jessica Biel, that was a whole other thing. It turned out to be part of the extended edition, which when we shot it, that was just the film. That's the way the film was. I think the extended edition was created out of the fact that they made Joe cut a bunch of stuff, and that's the version they released. And what they released as the extended edition was the actual film that we originally made, which had more exposition and, less blowed up real good stuff, which I think is why a lot of these films end up seeming so disjointed, is because they cut out all of the stuff that explains everything. They just leave in all the noise and the explosions. But it was a fun little scene with Jessica Biel and her interrogating me, and me basically having the punchline to that whole scene about her, how do you know how I feel? Do you know which way I'm leaning on this? And forward. But the thing I remember the most about working with her is they had to come. We had, at the end of the day, we had shot all of her coverage, but we hadn't shot my coverage. So we came back another day, and she came back just to be there for the off-camera dialogue, which is always nice when you're not having to do the scene with a tennis ball. But she was sitting on the end of the dolly on a little chair. So I remember the thing moving forward, moving back, moving forward, moving back, and her sitting on the edge of this thing, going with the camera and having the little go on off there. So that was just a fun little scene. The singing of the song and the karate moves, I think we sort of just made that up on the day. The song was something that was scripted because that was going to be in the soundtrack. So they already had to get the rights to that song. I had a little earpiece, a little bug in my ear that was playing the song that was in tune with the choreography of me pushing the buttons on the oven. And so that took a bit to get used to because, when you're not used to having an earpiece in your ear, I would start listening to the song and get into the song and forget that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be doing something along with it. And I'm supposed to be singing also. And so that took a bit. And then they wanted me to sing with a falsetto. And my wife was at home. She had injured herself. She was having some medical issues, and I needed to take her to the hospital. So I was a little stressed out with that on my mind, and I couldn't really focus. And for some reason, I just could not do a falsetto voice. I just could not sing real high. Could not do it. So I ended up having to, basically, I was like, pulling my voice in, and instead of singing out, I was singing in. I was like, I've been lonely. And it was like the worst thing ever, but we ended up going into another room and recording the song a bunch of times. And I think they used one of those versions because I don't sound that horrible in the movie. You hear me singing, but it's still not a really good falsetto, but it was a fun little scene. As far as the Meatloaf t-shirt, I would like to say that had something to do with my story and my connection and what Meatloaf has meant to me and my wife. But either someone had heard that story, like maybe Joe had heard that story, but I think it's just one of those strange coincidences that has happened in my life with Meatloaf. Because when I went to the original wardrobe fitting, they had already had a Meatloaf shirt that they wanted me to try. There was another shirt, the one that I wear in the show, that's the one they wanted me to wear, but they hadn't gotten the licensing on it yet, or they hadn't signed the deal, so they hadn't gotten that shirt. So they had another one that they were having me try. I think they had gotten it from a iron-on, one of these rock head shops where they had gotten that shirt. And so that was always part of the Gilbert character. It was just a weird coincidence. It had nothing to do with our story, but it's always funny how that stuff plays itself out. A-Team was a fun film. It was a fun chance to get to work with Joe Carnahan, who I'd only known, on the sidelines. I'd only known of him, not really, hadn't spent any time with him. He knew of me because of the film. He had known my character, Baby Boy Tremor, but getting to come on set and play with him and do a few days with that character was a hoot. And I liked the movie. I liked the film version that we showed, which is the extended edition, much better than the theatrical version. But that was a fun time and a fun shoot, and I'm glad it's on my resume.
Her name is Clarissa, but they call her Clarine. Shotgun is jiving, it's a woman I've ever seen. She's a truck driver's mama and the state patrol queen.